The Rum of the Mist show that you are currently tuned into will begin in about 5 minutes. Until then, enjoy this wonderful tune.
Why does a good man have to die? Another piece of shit to be born. Reasons unheard of tearing my flesh. My heart is ripped, my soul is torn.
You are listening to Realm of the Mist podcast with your host, Christen Stovall, presented by Realm of the Mist Entertainment.
Unless I say I'm not going to be on it, I'm typically planning on doing it.
Hey, what's up, guys? Chris Stolle here with Christen Stovall. How you doing?
Hello. I'm great. How are you?
I'm well. And guess what, guys? Realm of the Mist podcast is back. Yay!
Woohoo!
Took a couple weeks off so we could concentrate on some of the other shows and some of the other fun little topics that were going on, especially with Star Wars Celebration and everything. But we are back, and Kristen and I are going to delve into a lot of swords and sorcery.
Yes.
We're gonna open up our inner Dungeons and Dragons. But first, let's get some of the other topics out of the way. First and foremost, as Kristen was just describing to me, for those that still play the video game, The Old Republic, the MMORPG of Star Wars, there's some exciting new news to The Old Republic.
Yes, there is. They announced recently that they're going to be doing another expansion. It's, I believe, called Onslaught. They're going back to the old Imp versus Pub format. They kind of delved away from that for a little while, which a lot of people didn't like. I was kind of on the fence about it. Some fun things about it, some not so fun things about it. They're also going to be releasing, and they haven't given an official date for this one yet, but it will be like within the next month, a new planet and a new weekly event, and the planet is Dantooine. So Star Wars fans can definitely remember that from the original trilogy. Yep. Which always excites me. Anytime they add a new planet that I've heard of, like in the original trilogy, I'm like, ah!
That's right. Dantooine was the planet that Leia tried to send the Death Star to save Alderaan. and
but
not
they
give
didn't
away
buy it.
and not give away the official base of the rebels, which was Yavin 4 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
so what's the planet look like? What does Dantooine look like in the Old Republic?
Oh yeah, because I happen to be on the public test server, so I don't know that I can give like any specifics or anything like that. But I think it's very nice. I think that the work is great. Just the scenery is really nice. I found the stuff that we can play because they don't put any story elements on there on the PTS because they want to surprise us too. But I found that the quests were really fun. And it was just really nice to be able to explore a new planet. It seemed very large. In fact, I didn't even get through it. So, and I was pretty dedicated for a little while.
Well, I guess what I'm meaning, if you could talk about it, at being a beta tester, I don't want to like get you in trouble and lose the privilege of testing, but I was meaning more like the environment, like like Endor was a forest and Hoth is icy and a glacier.
Tatooine is a desert.
Right. What kind of environment is Dantooine, or is there any specific characteristic to the planet?
Well, I think I could probably say that because I've seen people discussing it on the forums. It's sort of the best way I could describe it is farmlands, except that there's not fields and everything. You've got grass and trees, and it's nice. And the ambient music is really nice as well.
So it's Kansas.
Yeah, it's Kansas, but with some... Yeah, actually, that was the first thing I thought when I started playing. I was like, it looks like home. Aww. Except more hills.
Just be careful to not have a house land on you if you're wearing striped socks.
It's fine. I've already got the ruby slippers. They're up in my room.
There you go. Man, we're just mismatching franchises altogether here.
Let's just do it.
Well, speaking of Disney, you had brought something else to my attention too. Being a person who has a subscription, this is news to me, and it actually really pisses me off.
Ditto.
For multiple reasons besides the fact that when I signed up for them, they were $7.99 a month. That's when I initially signed up with them. And I remember when they first started out, they did only do DVD releases, they were a rental thing, and until the streaming service thing that they kind of innovated.
Yeah.
But again, Netflix is raising prices to $12.99 a month. Or did they already do that?
I believe the message that I got said that they would be. And I have the 2 screens, which I think is just basic. It's just you get the basic 2 screens, and it said it was going up to $12.99 a month. And I'm just like, this just gets more and more ridiculous, especially when they don't have any of the add-ons that like Hulu has. With Hulu, you can get add-ons that tie you into HBO and I think even Stars. So it's just sort of shooting themselves in the foot.
Well, again, like when I first started out using Netflix, they were $7.99 a month, and there was no package deal to it. It was like you could stream service over your computer, over television, if you have like a certain way of doing it, whether a video game system or a smart TV or something,
or Roku.
Right, so and that was it. You got to watch it, and then they started adding things like the DVR. Where you could download episodes, which was great for me on my phone, because sometimes I'm just not in a strong signal,
right.
Whether data or Wi-Fi. So if I download it, great, which I can argue about the download service because it really pisses me off that certain things didn't have it.
Yeah, I never used it because I couldn't get it on my little tablet, and I wanted it so I could download the episodes of whatever show and like watch it when I was on an airplane,
Right. No, that's exactly right. That is exactly right. Like when I was working at the apartment complex, there'd be some times where I was watching a show or something, and for the sake of argument, I got a call to do a heater, in the boiler room basement, and there's no signal down there, and I still wanted to catch the show while I'm working on it.
Right.
That was what the download was for. But, like, I could download, for the sake of argument, I could download The Flash. That was fine. But if I wanted to continue watching Daredevil, for some reason, Daredevil didn't have a download feature.
Yeah, there seemed to be no rhyme or reason to the download feature.
So, and then they raised it up to $10 a month, which that was fine. I didn't care, especially because of the fact that Star Wars was on there, that Marvel was on there, that a lot of the TV shows I dug was on there. Quite honestly, Netflix was more important to me about TV shows and catching up on things that I missed, or recatching up the shit that I used to watch, than the movies. The movie releases I didn't care so much about.
Oh yeah, I would binge watch the TV shows. Once in a blue moon, I'd watch a movie. Like, that's where I caught Thor Ragnarok, and I mean, it was fantastic. I was sick, and it was the funniest thing I'd seen in like a week. I could have also been delirious. I don't know, but I'm going with it.
And then recently they raised it up to $11.99 a month. So I know we're talking now about $1, but in contrast to things, as Chris and I were talking about before we jumped on to air here, Netflix is losing shows and losing movies because Disney's starting their own stream service for a hell of a lot cheaper, and they're taking all their shit with them. Marvel, Star Wars, all the Disney stuff, that's all going to be on their streaming service for, what was it, $6 a month?
Yeah, it's like $6.99 or something. Like, I was reading all of this stuff today because I got that email, and I'm like, really? And it's just a change here and there is fine, but it's been this progressive, hiking up of the prices. And before long, I feel like they're going to be wanting us to pay $24.99 a month, and I'm not doing that.
Well, I was about to say, Netflix just isn't worth that. If I'm going to pay that much money for one service,
it should bundle in all the others.
Well, it should bundle in all the others, like you're saying Hulu kind of does, although I argue about Hulu.
I don't love Hulu.
Hulu wanted like $7.99 a month for access to see their shows and movies and stuff, but it had commercials all through it. If I didn't want the commercials, I had to pay more. Really? Yeah. What am I paying you for to be? If I want to watch shows with commercials,
exactly,
that actually take commercial breaks at the right time in the show, I'll watch TV.
Right.
What am I paying you for?
Exactly. I always thought that was a little weird.
But like you said, they do offer where like there's some bundles or some packages where they'll tie into HBO or Stars or whatever the case may be. But the fact of the matter is, even without that, like if I'm going to pay $20 a month for Netflix and have half the entertainment, why would I do that when I could pay $7 here, $6 there, or $5 there for the other smaller services that have the shows and movies I actually want to see?
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. And with them losing Disney, and I don't know that Disney has said they're going to immediately take stuff away, but the writing's on the wall. It's going to happen. They're not going to compete with Netflix if they've got their own streaming service.
Since I signed up to Netflix, Star Wars: The Clone Wars TV cartoon has been on Netflix. It has recently been removed from Netflix. If the writing ain't on the wall there.
Yep. It's happening.
It's happening. And I mean, yeah, okay. I know that recently they put up the Lucasfilm classic movies of the Indiana Jones movies, all 4 of those movies. But there's no new Indiana Jones, so nobody cares that they're on Netflix right now.
Nope. And really, how long will they be on Netflix?
No, absolutely.
It's like they're throwing a lifesaver out to a drowning company, like, here, but we're going to keep going.
Well, here's one that'll blow your mind right now. Right now, the 2 biggest things that I see on Netflix, and I could be wrong here, okay, but the 2 biggest things I see on Netflix is Star Wars and Marvel, which we all know is Disney.
Exactly.
And we'll probably go over to the streaming service for $7 a month once that goes live. Then all you really have left, for mainstay purposes is Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
CBS All Access could turn around and just grab all the Treks and put them on there with Discovery.
Yes,
for
they could.
$5 a month, and Netflix is closed.
Exactly. And Netflix recently announced that they would be canceling their in-house show, this Santa Clarita Diet, and that was pretty popular. So that really doesn't look very good either, not to mention Orange is the New Black, which is one of their big shows. That one's coming to an end. And there was another one that was really big that they're bringing to an end as well. So they're also starting to stop their own productions. It doesn't look good.
Okay, so if they're stopping their own homemade productions, movies, TV shows, like there's some good ones that are on Netflix that I absolutely fell in love with, like The Last Kingdom was a
The Last Kingdom was
phenomenal
brilliant.
TV series on Netflix, and if I ever gave up my Netflix service, that would be one thing that I would really miss. Mm-hmm. Especially since I did hear they're finally doing another season.
Really? Because it seemed like it had kind of come to its natural conclusion with the last season that I watched.
I think that's what that was supposed to be, but I guess demand.
Right. I mean, I don't think they're not completely shutting down production, but the fact that they're stopping shows, like, again, Orange is the New Black kind of is coming to its natural conclusion, but from what I understand, Santa Clarita Diet it's kind of shocking that they're canceling that one.
No, you're absolutely right, and it's just Netflix is going to shoot itself in the foot with a lot of streaming services coming out now, and a lot of properties taking back their property to go to their streaming services. Netflix should be lowering prices to keep audience, not raising.
Exactly, and they lost Doctor Who a few years ago because of BritBox. You know, they decided to do their own streaming service, and most of the British television got taken off of Netflix, and they, losing Doctor Who is not a thing anybody wants to do.
Not being a Whovian myself, I could care less one way or another. However, the popularity of the franchise it's very...
it's a big fandom.
Oh, yeah, it's a big hit in the pocket. As a business. Like I said, I may not personally...
You don't want to lose those big fandoms.
Right. I may not personally be a fan of Doctor Who, but that doesn't mean I don't recognize the fact that there is a huge fandom out there for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just dumb, and I don't know. Maybe Netflix is thinking about going a different direction altogether.
Maybe.
With their services, with their shows. Maybe
they'll start focusing more on their own stuff and less on doing things with
But again, if you're coming up with unknown properties and unknown things, you can't be expected to be charging people $20 a month,
right.
just because you think your name is worth the money.
Oh yeah, and if the current trend continues, it absolutely will end up being $20 a month.
Absolutely ridiculous. So, guys, fair warning, if you're a Netflix subscriber or somebody who is thinking about picking up Netflix, they're raising prices, and it seems like they're going to keep doing it almost every year.
Yeah.
It's only been about a year since they went to $11.99, hasn't it?
Yeah, a year, maybe two at the most, but it was fairly recent.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. So, and again, like we warned you, Netflix is losing a lot of its mainstay properties because of people like Disney creating their own streaming services for a hell of a lot cheaper.
Yep.
I'm not saying go to those other services and forget Netflix. I'm not saying boycott Netflix.
No.
Although I'm not saying that you shouldn't either.
I mean, you do you. Listeners, you do you.
Look, there are free streaming services out there, okay? I'll tell you straight out.
There are.
There is Sony Crackle. There is Tubi TV. They've got great content on there, and it doesn't cost you a dime.
Yep.
Just
it's
think
all
about
on
that.
My Roku.
So just think about that, guys.
It's just food for thought. That should be a new segment. Food for thought.
Food for thought. Hey, I'm always open to new stuff, so... The less I have to come up with, the happier I am. But actually, here's it kind of segues in, talking about the streaming services. We just mentioned CBS All Access. And, of course, their mainstay show that launched their service just ended its second season, and that is Star Trek Discovery. Yes. Now, I know you just caught up on it.
I finally got to watch it and get caught up.
Now, you remember last year on Breaking the Fourth Wall when the first season happened.
Yeah.
I was shitting all over this show. I was completely against everything this show stood for. It was destroying the...
I know. I was fully prepared to hate it after that.
it was, to me, it was shitting on the franchise, the history of the franchise. It was shitting on Gene Roddenberry's vision. It was a terrible show. I've been waiting for the opportunity to sit down and talk about season 2. Because
get into it.
Because with the introduction of Christopher Pike and bringing in the Starship Enterprise, well, before I give my analysis, let's catch yours. This is the first time you get to finally sit down and talk Star Trek Discovery at all.
Yeah, and know what I'm talking about.
Right. So we'll get your view first before I tell you whether my opinion has changed, gotten worse, gotten better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first episode, I was very much like, what? What is this? What is happening? I'm not sure about this. The Klingons are stupid. I hated the Klingons. And one of my biggest beefs was that, like, it was really hard to tell the Klingons apart, for one. Right. Because they all looked the same, and all of their scenes were in captions in Klingon, or, in caps, because they were speaking Klingon, it was all in captions, and the captions were going fast, and I happen to have a visual disability, so it takes me a little bit of time to read them, which is aggravating when you have to pause it every few seconds. It tends to kill the moment.
Well, it kind of hurt it, too, because you think about the original series, movies and series, where Klingon spoke in Klingon. Yeah, you had the subtitles down the bottom, but they spoke quick, the same as, I'm speaking in regular tones right now, or you speak in regular tones. But in this show, like, the captions were going quick, but the Klingons talk like they had speech impediments. Talk. It's like, dude, where's the beat here, man?
Right. So it took me a little while. I did get into it. I got to where I appreciated some of the characters. I certainly have my favorites. But my impression of the first season was eventually I did like it, but it wasn't what I would watch if I felt like watching Star Trek.
Right.
It was good, but it wasn't what I would watch if I wanted to watch Star Trek. Then I would just go to Netflix and watch Star Trek. But I totally agree. With the second season, they finally found their stride, and they found their voice, and the character development is getting a bit better. That was another really weak point in the first season, is character development.
Nobody liked each other.
No, and everybody was so one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this character was here to be this type of person, and this one was here to be this type of person, and you never saw any growth, and that I found boring. They were going through these insane things. They were going through wartime, and it never seemed to make them grow as characters, and that was just, in my opinion, lazy writing.
Right.
But yeah, then it got me interested enough, and I got attached enough to some of the characters that when the second season came along, I was into it. I was like, all right. And Pike, that actor hit it out of the ballpark.
Yes.
He nailed it.
Yes, I could watch a whole entire series. Like, give me a rebooted Star Trek original series before Kirk's command.
Right. With Pike.
Of just Pike on the Enterprise, because wow, was I thoroughly enjoying his performance. I
was never into that character until I saw him, until this incarnation of him. He just nails it.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, because the original series guy that did the pilot episode of the Menagerie, the Cage,
mm-hmm.
I hated him. He was a dick. Christopher Pike. He was an ass. I didn't like him at all. But yeah, I think the first time I liked the character of Christopher Pike was in the J.J. Abrams Kelvin Universe movies, where you had Captain / Admiral Pike being a father figure to Kirk.
Yeah.
That's where he started having like a more of a human feel, and I thought they brought the best of that type of character to Chris Pike in Discovery.
They really melded those two aspects, like, because he still kind of has that, like, Captain Kirk cowboy, Star Trek captain thing going on,
right.
But he did have that more sophisticated, wise mentor thing. You could see how he could grow into that in this character, even though they're unrelated. You could still see the blend of the two, and it was fantastic. Although there were times in the second season I was a little bit like, so Skynet?
Well, there was a lot of speculation about some of the things, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it yet. 'Cause, again, with the streaming service, it doesn't mean you have to catch it the day it releases. So, I don't, fair warning, guys, there may be a little bit of spoiler in this, but, a lot of people were alluding to this could be retconning some of the Star Trek stories in the sense that, they thought this was going to be the birth of the Borg.
Oh, that could have been interesting. I've also heard that Discovery was in some ways going to try to meld the Calvin universe with the canon, original canon, and try to maybe close some of that gap a little bit. And while I can maybe see that in some aspects, I don't think that that's necessarily a goal.
I don't think Discovery could do it. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think the only way you could do that is through the movies, through Abrams' trilogy, and maybe in the fourth film, they're coming to the end of their 5-year mission. The Enterprise has come to be retired. Kirk becomes an admiral, but something in some way, shape, or form happens that reemerges the timelines. So that way, the original series will stand on its own as prime timeline, and of course, the movies of Kelvin. But then it meets back together to become prime timeline for the motion picture.
Yeah, that could work.
And then that recanonizes all the rest of Star Trek that happens after the original trilogy.
Right.
That's always been my thought process.
Yeah, that could work. I also heard or read on an article today that they've started filming the new Picard series, which I'm much more antsy about that than Discovery, because Discovery is telling another story. It's like a new crew and everything. I don't think I want Captain Picard's story to be retconned. I liked that story, but we'll see what they do with it. They've managed to kind of find their footing with Discovery. Feeding, that's brilliant. I'm a writer.
Well, luckily typing words is a lot different than saying the words.
Exactly. That's why you have an editor. But so I'm gonna keep an open mind and see what happens. It did take them a little while to find the groove for Discovery, but I think when they did, it was they made a really good decision in giving the Klingons hair in the second season. Yes. I credit where it's due. That helped a lot.
and forced them to start speaking English again. Or excuse me, basic common. But my opinion of it, I knew I was going to be checking out season 2 at the end of season 1, even though I absolutely despised season 1, and I still despise season 1. It's $20 at Walmart right now. I won't buy it. I absolutely hated season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. The only thing that made me say I will give season 2 a chance was the fact that they teased the Enterprise. I'm like, I want to see the Enterprise. I want to see the crew of the Enterprise. I knew it wasn't going to be Kirk. I knew it had to be Christopher Pike and all number 1 and Mitchell and all the characters that we knew from the original crew of the USS Enterprise in the original series before Kirk's takeover.
Yeah.
So I wanted to at least see season 1, or excuse me, episode 1 of season 2. But you're right. With the introduction of Christopher Pike, and the smartest thing they could ever do was put Christopher Pike on the bridge of the Discovery.
Exactly.
Because, like you said, that humanized the characters. All of a sudden, Pike's the catalyst making these characters come forefront and stop bickering at each other like a bunch of kids with no supervision.
Right.
And then the introduction of Spock, which that was a really weird dynamic. And at first, I didn't like Spock.
I thought baby Spock was adorable. I'm like, oh, look, it's a tiny baby Spock.
No, baby Spock was fine. Baby Spock was fine, but emo bearded Spock was...
Yeah, I kept going, please shave the beard. Please shave the beard. Why is it halfway down your neck? Please shave the beard.
But as the story went on and you started to see what Spock was dealing with, and especially I love the introduction. I thought it was great, actually, character development, that Spock actually has dyslexia. He had a learning disability.
Yes, I loved that. That was amazing. Yeah, I really thought it added some interesting layers to that character. They really did some interesting things with him, and and showed different sides of him while also still kind of remaining true to what he started as. So I thought he was they handled it well. I was questioning it at first, but then I was surprised by how well they handled it.
Well, and then coming towards the end of the season, their decision to send Discovery into the future so that Control can never get control of the spheres.
Spoiler alert!
Spoilers. Can never get control of the spheres. And everything else I thought was a beautiful idea because it definitely took care of the situation that a lot of fans had through 50-plus years of Star Trek lore. How come Discovery was never once even mentioned or thought of?
Right.
And
I
it's
was
because
like,
it was marked as destroyed and never existed.
Exactly. So I'm interested to see what they do with season 3. I have no idea what they could possibly have in store, and I love that.
Well, that's the two things I wanted to bring up. Number one, if I have any complaint about season 2 about Star Trek Discovery, it is this. And it's sad for me to say it, but it's the exact same conversation I had before. My biggest complaint, Michael fucking Burnham.
See, I like her.
She is a boring character to me. She's supposed to be the forefront character of the show, and to me, even though she showed more human quality in this season, she was still, to me, the weakest character out of everybody there, and that's sad because you're supposed to be the star. You're supposed to be our Captain Kirk of this one, or Picard of this one, and you're the character I care the least amount.
I would say that I do like Star Trek Discovery, but in my opinion, its weakest link is it's not very good with character development.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They really don't delve into these characters or give them... They don't really ever explore them or give them any stories that are personal arcs so that we can get to know them better and see different aspects of them. Mm-hmm. And that would be my biggest complaint about Discovery is everything's always like this one long chain story. And with the other Star Treks, you did get some... Like you got some episodes that were sort of focused on one character and weren't always some big the galaxy's gonna end thing.
Right.
Like sometimes they were just a smaller thing, and yeah, you had your subplots that maybe like the ship was in danger and it wasn't necessarily tied to the little personal journey, but sometimes it was. And that's where I think Discovery has really dropped the ball in that they have characters which I feel could be very interesting, and yet they rarely deeply explore them.
No, you're not wrong, especially when it comes to the Doctor and the scientist.
Oh, the Doctor is so horribly underdeveloped. It makes me so annoyed. I'm like, okay, you guys were making a big deal about finally having a gay couple, and one is pretty much just the whiny wife. And you never let him be anything else, and he could be interesting.
That's where I was going to go with it. Is you got this gay couple. You made a deal that it was supposed to be, a big deal because it's an interracial gay couple, no less. Not just a gay couple, but an interracial gay couple. All right, I'm invested. I care. You made the black guy disappear, the Doctor disappear. Caught in the fungal net, if you will, and then they brought him back, and
he was still just the whiny wife.
And now we need Dr. Phil, Space Dr. Phil, to fucking give him couples counseling. You didn't develop shit about their relationship as people. And
the other character, the science, the other character, he is this larger than life. He's a really fun character. He's actually one of my favorites. And I just feel like it's such a disservice to have only one half of this couple be developed and only one half of this couple ever being given any real screen time or any story arcs at all.
Like you're talking about personal story arcs, Saru, his race of people are used to being prey and victims, and then he loses the little shit, his warning device in the back of his head.
The little tendril-y things.
Yeah, the tendrils that warn him of danger and death. It's gone, and now all of a sudden he's no longer fearful of death or whatever else.
Yeah. He's the one character that's gotten some art. Yeah.
But that's
and I think he's an awesome character.
That is one arc we desperately need to delve into, because now we can see the universe through his eyes, somebody who's so used to being the prey.
Exactly. And that whole species is really fascinating. Just like you have this species that in some ways still very like driven by instinct in a way that's more forefront in the mind than we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
But
so they definitely need. Here's the thing, and this is going to be a question I will ask you. The way Star Trek Discovery Season 2 ended,
mm-hmm.
I don't think there should be a Season 3. And it's not because I didn't enjoy Season 2. Like I said, Season 2, yes, it changed my mind about Star Trek Discovery. It really did. I was highly impressed enough with Star Trek Discovery Season 2 to not shit on it as like I did with Season 1. I still hate Season 1. If you erase Season 1 and start it with Season 2, I'd be all about this.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
so I'm getting the impression you didn't care for Season 1.
You might say I didn't care for Season 1.
Super subtle.
Super subtle. I didn't want to hurt any feelings with it, you know? No, but with the way they ended the story arc, and they sent the Discovery off, and now they're disavowing any association that the characters or the ship ever even existed in our timeline, in
mm-hmm.
their timeline.
Right.
It seems like a logical end choice. Should there even be a Season 3?
Well, I think yes. And the reason I think yes is because I'm really tired of prequels. And they're jumping. Spoiler. So if you haven't caught up, don't listen. Plug your ears, hum, whatever. But it's a chance to actually start telling the story from where the last series ended off, you know? Like, it's actually progressing the story instead of going back and retconning the story. Like, that's why I think I'm excited about a Season 3, because it's a chance to see new story, not details of old story.
So they're jumping far enough.
Maybe
I missed that. They're jumping far enough in the future that Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager have all already happened.
That was the impression I got.
So
because
Voyager's
they had
back
to jump
home
far
at
enough.
Earth. Voyager's already back home at Earth when all this happens.
That was the impression I got. I mean, they certainly never gave an exact star date or anything, but the impression I got was that they were leaping like so far ahead into the future that Star Trek Skynet could not get them. Which, by the way, it's not Control, it's Star Trek Skynet.
Yes, it really is.
That's what it is. Totally Star Trek Skynet.
I still don't know how I feel about the whole Section 31 story arc. I really don't. Maybe
well, that started in other series, so it kind of followed with stuff I'd seen in the other series.
Well, no, I'm fine with that, but fair enough that maybe I'm just not as deep into Star Trek canon as I am Star Wars.
Right.
But I always looked at Starfleet and Star Trek as supposed to be, this is the future that we as humans want in the future. Mm-hmm. Not just technology, but we all get along and we trust our government officials and we trust our military
society.
Our utopian society, and yet we still got black ops within the exploration for peace.
Right. Well, Section 31 started in Deep Space Nine, and it definitely follows the same attitude, minus Skynet, that is in Discovery. That there's just no Skynet.
Right, and it also appeared to Star Trek Enterprise, which puts it all the way back to basically the birth of Starfleet. Mm-hmm. Since NX-01 was the first warp-capable starship of Starfleet. Well, at least Warp 5 capable. Right. So you're talking about Section 31 was around 90-plus years
from
before...
the get-go.
Yeah, 90-plus years before Kirk took command of an Enterprise.
Right.
So... That kind of, I don't know, Section 31 just kind of sits wrong with me on that aspect.
And I think it does with a lot of people. I mean, not that I've gone out and done a Family Feud survey on it, but I think it does sit a little off with a bunch of people. I never really got into the Section 31 arcs in Deep Space Nine. I actually only, in the last few years, watched all of Deep Space Nine because I couldn't really get into it, and then we had no cable growing up, and the fuzzy channel, it didn't work. And then Netflix happened, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch it again.
Well, you know what? Deep Space Nine was always the weak one of the series to me. And even now, I would put Discovery above Deep Space Nine because of season 2. It would have been well below Deep Space Nine had it only been season 1. But I would put, because of season 2, I would put Discovery above Deep Space Nine. A lot of people would blast me for that, but I never cared about a space station. I liked going out on a starship.
Deep Space Nine was never one of my favorites, although I will say I think it has the most powerful series finale out of all of them.
You think?
I do. It's the only one that I actually cry when I watch, and I don't cry easily at, TV or movies, so it takes something. I think it just had that, it was the way they handled the ending, and it had a sense of, wow, we've really been through something big.
I see. I'm one of those people. I still I wonder what could have been. I highly believe that Star Trek Enterprise was a completely underrated show, and it was canceled before it really got its legs. It was just starting to find its footing. It was, season 3 and season 4, they were finally getting some great story arcs going. You know what I mean?
I've watched that one once. It never grabbed me.
I loved it. I loved the first look into Starfleet figuring out how to be a part of this intergalactic stage now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the crew of the Enterprise being the first humans to really go out and explore.
Yeah. I mean, I don't dislike really any Star Trek series. I think if you watch all of them, you can kind of find a redeeming quality, and then they make a nice addition to the picture as a whole. But I definitely have my favorites.
That's true, but I wonder what could have been for Enterprise.
Right.
I mean, the way they decided to end it felt a little bit rushed because they were canceled. They had to end it that way.
Right.
But I thought it was very powerful that it ended with the chartering of the United Federation of Planets.
True. They just made me very mad by killing my favorite character. They will never be forgiven for that.
Wait, refresh my memory. Who died?
Trip.
Oh, right. That's right.
I loved Trip. It made me so mad. Like, you've ruined it.
Charles Tucker III. I forgot about that.
Loved him so much.
That was something that I think drew me to the show, was the dynamic between Archer and Trip. That their friendship, where Archer was trying to be the badass captain that he needed to be, running his father's Warp 5 engine, but at the same time he could sit there drinking beer, watching water polo with his buddy Trip,
and cuddle his beagle.
And sneak him cheese every so often. Yeah. There was a lot to like about Enterprise. I think what hurt Enterprise is they tried to modernize too much.
I would say I think that's a big problem with the going back and doing stuff that takes place before these other series and using the special effects and making it all look so much more modern, because it does take you out of the story a little bit. It kind of makes you go, but why did they have that then and they didn't have it there? I mean, there's never going to be any getting around the super dated orange deco on the original Star Trek, but
I will say something that I probably will get blasted by every Star Trek fan on the planet. As much as I love and respect the original series, and I love and respect it, I would not be opposed to the idea, personally would not be opposed to the idea of, I wouldn't say rebooting it, but maybe remastering some of the background sets and special effects.
It could use a facelift. I mean, that being said, there's something something to be valued in nostalgia, but there's really no way to make that set sort of not look cheesy. There's no way to do it.
Well, with CGI nowadays, I mean, how hard would it be to replace a computer console?
Yeah, like if they didn't change it, it's always gonna stick out. It just is. It's always gonna stick out in a weird way.
It's always gonna be children's Legos and Christmas lights.
Yeah. It's just very little getting around that.
Oh man, but overall, season 2 Star Trek Discovery was a total redemption for season 1 for me. I actually found myself enraptured to want to know what happened next.
Yeah.
Getting to the season finale, and I was actually sad to see the season end. I really was.
Yeah.
You know,
It was definitely more engaging.
They definitely. I don't know if they were listening to their fan base or this was the plan all along, but they finally seem to be getting ahead of steam on the series. And like I said, logically, the way they ended the season, I would be fine if they said that was it, and Star Trek Discovery was a mini series. But it's enough for me that if they are doing a season 3, which I know they are,
right, because it's already been confirmed.
That I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it. And hopefully they use the opportunity to do, like you said, and take that time as they're exploring this brand new timeline.
Yes, telling new stories, not rehashing old ones.
Well, not just that. What I was going to say is that they could take the time to actually get a little more personal with the crew that's left on the Discovery.
Yes, yeah. And they would have so much more freedom because you're not going to have Star Trek fans going, excuse me, you're wrong. Because we are known to on occasion do that.
Yeah. The Star Wars fans are just as bad. I can't say nothing on that.
I mean, I think really any passionate fandom is going to be that way. And yes, it's difficult, but it also means that they're passionate about it.
Right. And it kind of reminds me of like Galaxy Quest, where people would argue about the placement of certain places on the ship.
I love that movie so much.
But that is the fandom. Like, I hate to be that guy, but Transporter Room C was never next to the galley and on Deck E. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it was totally based off the Star Trek fans. So.
Well, so is Orville, and Orville's knocking it out of the freaking park.
Yeah, I still need to get caught up on that one. I've just had to be really strict about shows that I know I'll binge watch, because then I won't do the things that I need to be doing for my book.
you and I will sit down and we will review Orville once you catch up, because you must see Orville. I mean, if you're a Trekkie fan, or Trekker, which is it? I've never been clear on that. Is it Trekkie or Trekker?
I really think it's up to the person. I prefer Trekkie. Other people prefer Trekker. And, for some reason, some people get really impassioned about it. And, if you choose one, it's like an insult to their mother and their honor and yada, yada, yada. Whereas I'm just like, I think this one sounds better.
See, I've always known it as Trekkies, but I've known some Trek fans that were just like, no, it's Trekkers. Like almost like they look at me like they caught me screwing their cat or something. It's just like, okay, sorry,
My bad.
Well, obviously, you're not a Star Trek fan. What, I can't like the TV shows and movies?
No, clearly, because you don't know.
Yeah, So, as I said, I'm more of a Star Wars than Star Trek fan, so I deal with the Star Wars fans just as bad as Star Trek fans deal with Star Trek fans, so I get it.
Yeah. I love them equally for different reasons. One is science fiction, one is science fantasy. And
that's exactly it. As a Star Wars fan, yes, I like Star Wars more. It appeals more to me.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I dislike you can't see because I don't have the camera on. I've got the Enterprise sitting on my computer desk. I have a replica of 1701-A on my desk. Because I do like Star Trek. I love Star Trek. I don't love it as deeply as I do Star Wars, where I've dived into the lore as intently. That doesn't mean I dislike. I've watched all the series. I've watched all the movies. I've read a couple, not all, because there's like 700 books.
There are so many books. Yeah. I've read very few of them because I'm like, This is basically fan fiction someone got permission for.
Pretty much, yeah. So I never
not that there's anything wrong with fan fiction. I have been known to write a few, not in Star Trek, and no one will ever know my fan fiction pen name, but it is there.
All right, now I'm going to have to find out.
No.
Well, I won't promote it on the podcast, but I will have to find that.
No.
That'll bug me until I know.
Oh God, but some of it's so bad because it was when I was like learning how to put a story together.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm like you. I grew up with Star Trek as a more prevalent part of my life and everything, but I love Star Wars too. I have a stunt grade lightsaber. I know how to use it. Someone I thought was going to break into my house, and I sat in my chair and logically thought, I have swords upstairs, but I don't want to go all the way upstairs because they might get inside while I'm going all the way upstairs to get a sword. I have a lightsaber. Can't stab them in real life, but it's gonna scare them when I come out with a lightsaber, and this hurts when it hits you.
I was about to say, it may not kill, but it'll definitely welt.
Oh, it'll welt. It can hurt. It can crack bones. Yeah, my brothers and I have all suffered injuries with lightsaber dueling. And they hurt. They're stunt grade lightsabers, so they hurt when they hit you.
So let's jump on real quick here since we were talking about fan fiction and writing. Little known fact is that Christen Stovall, in case you guys didn't know, because she doesn't really talk about it all that much, she happens to be a writer, guys, a published writer.
Well, I don't talk about it here because it's not my platform.
Well, this is the perfect platform to talk about it because we talk about all of entertainment.
It's not my show, so I'm not gonna like.
Do you want your own show? I'll give you the show. I don't mind.
I would want to give all the spoilers. Can't do that.
Well, little known fact is she's got this little book series she wrote. You know, you may have heard of it, the Song of Souls Trilogy. And she just completed book 3. Now, the reason this is a segue is we are going to be talking about some fantasy genre stuff, as I said in the beginning of the show. We were talking about, some Dungeons and Dragons type stuff because of, some exciting news with Game of Thrones being back, some exciting news about the Lord of the Rings TV series getting in production, But to really segue it in, I mean, we have a fantasy author right here.
We do. Guilty as charged.
So... it could lead into a speculation conversation later on about, other fantasy properties we wouldn't mind seeing becoming TV shows or movies.
All of them.
Here's your opportunity to throw your pitch for a TV series here.
Well, I don't want a TV series. I want major motion pictures.
Oh, really?
With the story as it is, it would definitely translate better to the big screen than a TV series.
Well, see, I heard George R.R. Martin was approached a long time ago for his songs of his Song of Fire and Ice series to be made as movies, and he turned it down because he didn't think that the movies would cut down too much of the content.
Oh yeah. Well, his is more than 3 books though.
True.
And they're hyper complicated books. Like they're actually, no offense to Game of Thrones because I do love it, but I find the books to be a little overcomplicated. Like sometimes I'm just like, really? Do we need to know that guy's brother dated that dude's cousin? And then there was a prophecy about their cat that somehow ties into White Walkers, and like, why? Why do I need to know all of these things? Please stop.
Well, I mean,
I don't think they could have made them into movies. I think there's just too much for Game of Thrones.
Well, I mean, Tolkien was just as guilty. I mean, I love the movies and what Peter Jackson did. Not so much the Hobbits, but the Lord of the Rings trilogy, But when you look back on Tolkien's work, I know it's a masterpiece of fantasy writing that a lot of people, absolutely love and adore. It's the Bible to them. I had a hard time reading those books because of Tolkien's inability to go into pages upon pages of details about a red apple on a table.
And see, I never thought he gave too much detail. But the difference in that is, yes, that he's also really detailed, but the basic story, the overarching plot, is still very focused. And you can condense it down and still stay true to the story. And yeah, you're going to lose some of the details and some of the minor characters, or not so minor characters, Tom Bombadil.
Tom Bombadil.
I'm so sorry, Tom Bombadil. But let's be honest, like, it would be easy to, and people are going to murder me for this. Like, he was a cut that could be made. I'm sorry. I know people are like, he was super important. But he was super important because he gave them a piece of information that you can easily have someone else give them. And I like him. He was cool. But, I mean, when you're looking at how a movie has to be put together and how you have to set the stage and everything, he was expendable.
Well,
and people are going to murder me for that.
I mean, I get where the fandom comes from, because I was kind of the same way when it came to, besides Tom Bombadil, I'm one of those people. It's like, how could you cut Tom Bombadil? You know, but you know, another way I could describe it is, for example, is the Harry Potter movies, particularly the character of Rita Skeeter, who was way more important in the books than she was in the movie.
Right.
You know, because she had a lot more dealings that put a lot of things in motion in the books that they ignored in Order of Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince.
They basically made her an annoying mosquito in the movies, whereas in the book she actually did have a purpose. It was still annoying, but it was a purpose.
Oh, of course. And I actually felt bad for Rita Skeeter in the movies because of that fact that, like, she played an important part in the story. And they just erased that and went some other direction for Harry and company to get the information that she was pivotal for them getting in the books. Right.
I've actually only read the Harry Potter books once each. I like them, but I don't know, I do like them. Didn't dislike them, but I've never really felt compelled to read them multiple times, which I can and have done with many other books. I read Lord of the Rings in 3 days once.
Well, I'll admit that my favorite book was Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And the reason of being that was my favorite book was reading that story, and it's spoilers for those that don't know. I'm sure,
at this point, they should
20
know.
20 years from now, you've read the books, you've seen the movies, you know Dumbledore dies. Okay?
Right.
All right. No, there's not really a spoiler there, but...
spoiler alerts have an expiration date. Like, after, let's say, a few years, just to be generous, because I personally think that once it's been out long enough to be on DVD and start showing on TV, you should know by now. Also, frankly, if it was a book series before it was a movie, then, you know what? The answers are out there. You don't get to whine about spoilers.
Well, during the time of the Half-Blood Prince, when it came out, I was dating this girl at the time, and she read the book first. We went out, we bought it on midnight release, hardback copy, and she read it first, and she had to keep quiet through the whole entire thing so she wouldn't spoil it for me. Now, during this time of my life, the only time I could read was when I was taking a shit, taking a bath, or in bed late at night with a book light so I'm not disturbing her, right?
Right.
So I get to that fateful part when Severus Snape kills Dumbledore. Yeah. And I'm in the bathtub at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up. I swear to God, I woke up half the neighbors. And I was like, no fucking way.
That is fantastic.
And I woke up my girlfriend at the time, and she's like, what the hell are you screaming? Oh, wait, you got to the part, didn't you?
In the bathtub, no less.
In the bathtub.
I hope you didn't drop the book in the tub.
I almost did. I really did. Yeah, I had to read it twice. I had to have read that wrong. But
yeah.
the reason I have it's such a special place in my heart, and that is one of my favorite books, is because it actually elicited that response out of me.
Right.
You know. And to be fair, I mean, Deathly Hallows did it too when it first came out, and I was one of the people I trusted Cerberus. Because they had this little thing going on at Borders. They were like, do you trust Cerberus or do you
I trusted Severus Snape,
I trusted Severus. I believed there was going to be a story involved, and turned out I was right.
Yeah.
But I remember like the first chapter of Deathly Hallows, and they killed a fucking owl.
Right?
Right off the bat, I'm like, this is not going to, I had a Luke Skywalker moment. This is not going to go the way I think.
Mine is Goblet of Fire. That one's my favorite because it's the first one that doesn't end with everything seemingly fixed.
Right.
It was where it took the first real dark turn, and I was like, oh, this is getting real.
Oh, Goblet was when you realized you're not reading a kid's book anymore.
Exactly, and it was the same reason that I like Empire Strikes Back so much. Is like, oh wait, dude got his hand chopped off, and his dad is awful.
Right.
His dad did it. Han is frozen. Luke is missing a hand, and he's Darth Vader's son. That is not good. I'm interested.
Right.
I mean, I liked the other ones too, but like, it wasn't tied up in this nice, tidy little bow. It was a bridge. I really like bridge stories, apparently. I like when it's not all fixed, as long as at the end it's fixed. I don't want it to be crap at the end, because life has enough bad endings. I read to escape. I don't want shitty endings when what I'm reading.
You know, it's funny though. I agree with you, but I don't mind when the story doesn't have a happily ever after, though. Like,
right.
even
it can have bittersweet.
Like Lord of the Rings is a perfect example. Like, okay, they defeated Sauron, they threw the ring into Mordor, the orcs, the York army is defeated, but Frodo still dies.
Yeah. I mean, there's still consequences, and people still walk away affected by it. Like, I don't want it to be perfect happily ever after. I do like when there's those consequences, and the fact that, yes, they may have defeated their enemy, but there was a price, and you can't unknow or unexperience those things. They will leave a mark.
Right.
And so I definitely like that. But I don't like when you value characters and you get to know them, and in some way they become your friends, and then at the end the author's like, and everyone is dead. The world is on fire. Goodbye, you have wasted the time in reading these books. Sorry you were cheering for the good guys. I hate that, because then I'm like, why did I read this? Why did I go through this?
I don't mind them so much, because they're so few and far in between that you get through that with this TV series, a movie, or a book.
Right.
You know, most of them have a happy ever after, or even if there are consequences at the end of it, it's very minor comparatively. Right. But so when those particular stories happen, it's refreshing. It's dark, sure, but it's refreshing because I didn't see that coming.
I just get mad. I'm like, nope, I'm shunning you. You are now shunned.
Well, all right. Well, let's before we really delve into the other fantasy world.
That's not to say that I necessarily do happy endings, just for the record, because I don't want to have any spoilers.
Oh, she was on it. She knew where I was leading this. It's like let's get back to the Song of Souls. So, are you basically telling me that there isn't going to be a very happy ending in this?
I'm not telling you there's a happy ending. I'm not telling you there's not a happy ending.
But there's definitely a resolution.
There's definitely an ending. Or is there?
Well, let's jump into it at the beginning. For those that may not have read the books yet, which, by the way, again, in the description down below, go to our official website, the Realm of the Myths website. Go to the merchandise page. It's marked as merch, and you can get direct access to Christen Stovall's book through Amazon. Go order the books. Right now, book 1 is up. I'm setting up for book 2 to be put on there as well. But either way,
someone keeps forgetting you to send the information because she's kind of a dork.
She's kind of dealing with publishing her 3rd book. I could deal with it, but you could probably from the page that the book 1 will take you to, you could probably search book 2. So, either way, go click that right now. Pause this video, go to our website, go to the merch page, go order the book, and when you come back, she's going to give you right now a synopsis of the story thus far, without spoilers, because I don't want to spoil it for people that haven't read the books yet. But go ahead and give us the journey of your main character and what really. I know the story so much, but for those that may not be familiar, tell us the inspiration behind not only what made you decide to write, but the characters themselves.
Well, the inspiration behind it is the loss of my husband when we had been married a year and a half. and he had a brain injury. He had it before we were married. He suffered that when he was 18, and because of it, he suffered with depression and chronic pain, and a year and a half after we were married, he ended his life. And yeah, that kind of leaves you going, well, my life is over now too. I don't know what's going on. There is no point. But I grew out of that, obviously.
Right.
I passed that point. There were a lot of awkward moments of just sort of wallowing in my own misery, but it's good now. But as I was going through that, I kind of started to think about, everybody says what they would just love to have one more hour with that person or just a chance to say goodbye. And I kind of started thinking about what that would be like, and a scene started to form in my mind. And before I knew it, I was like, well, these characters are kind of interesting. Who are they really? And then I had these characters developed, and after that a story just started going, and I realized I had more than one book. I had 3 books. So, don't ever do anything small, just dive in. Don't start with one. Dive in and do a trilogy. Great piece of advice. That wasn't exhausting or stressful at all.
well, here's the major question. Before the unfortunate passing of your husband, did you even have aspirations of being a writer, or even after the passing, when you first started exploring this, wasn't it more like therapy writing that became a book, or was it always the thought like I could write a book?
Well, that's when fan fiction was happening. And it was Lord of the Rings. I'll give you that. It was Lord of the Rings fan fiction.
Okay.
Because, who doesn't want to play in Middle Earth?
Only if I get a lightsaber.
In Middle Earth, I'm down. Or because their swords, if they're made by elves, glow when orcs are nearby. So does that count?
Only if it goes. Sorry, go ahead. You're talking about you.
That's all right.
Don't let me take your spotlight.
The awkward wasn't that. The awkward was my brain just clicked off. It happens frequently. So I started with Finn, and I kind of always thought, it'd be cool to write a book, but I didn't really have a story. Like, I'd have ideas, but they'd been done before. And
right.
There was nothing special about them and nothing unique and nothing to make them stand out. And then after he died, I hadn't written for a while because I did this thing where I met this guy and I fell in love, and I kind of forgot about writing for a little while because I was all caught up in planning a wedding and this life that I was going to have. I did a little bit. I was kind of getting back into it when all of this happened. And then as I got this idea, it kind of gave me a way to say goodbye and work through the feelings, and it gave me a way to talk about them and to talk about those really difficult things that I didn't feel comfortable doing with other people. And if I could put it in these characters and put it in this other world, I was able to say, this is what it was like waking up without him there and screaming into my pillow, because that was the only way to get the enormity of that emotion out. So it did end up becoming therapy in a lot of ways. And then different things that I had experienced through life started to kind of come out and form, and I could use that to inspire this. And yet I was also watching these characters develop and going, this character is not me. This character is not him. And now I have people go, so they're about you and your husband, right? And I'm like, no. They can do things that I would never have done. Like, some of the stuff I do to them, I would have turned and run. Like, they would have been, I'm not going to lie, I would have been like, all right, peace out, goodbye.
Right.
You guys got this, right?
Well, how hard was it? Let me interject here. As you well know, I was attempting to try to write a book, delving in a world that a friend of mine had created through radio broadcast.
I know the world, and I know the friend. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, but the other people don't, and it's kind of a Star Trek futurist type story, which for for all intents and purposes, it's easier, I would think, to try to come up with something for it because it exists in a world that actually exists. You know, Earth exists, the galaxy exists. If I have a question about anything, I go Google, you know, a star, and there it is. I know where it is. How hard was it to not only come up with these characters in the story, but to create the world itself? Something that just never existed in anything. And now you're creating these kingdoms, these villages, these hills, these valleys, these mountains, and so on. The list goes on and on and on. Like, how did you keep track of it? How did you even come up with it?
Okay, so confession. I still have to go back and look in the books and go, how did I spell that person's name? What did I name that town? All right, there we go. Not gonna lie, that happens, and it's probably pretty common.
Right.
It was hard in some elements. It wasn't, the broad stroke ideas were easy. It was then finding the little details and figuring out how to describe them, and also figuring out how to set them apart from things that have already been done. And there's a lot of high fantasy out there, so a lot of things have already been done.
Right.
But I also enjoy looking at folklore and looking at elements that we don't see as often in fantasy. Like, everybody sees, and there are elves and dwarves in my books. Oh, okay, so I just gave you a spoiler for the third book on accident.
I would say I would edit it out, but I'm not going to remember the timestamp.
It's not a huge spoiler, and there's already... I said there were dwarves, and as I recall, there's actually dwarves in the first one, too, so it's fine.
Okay. Yes,
There you
there were.
go.
There were dwarves, by the way.
Yeah.
I've actually read
But
the
only,
I still haven't read the
slightly.
second one yet because I got to get a hold of my girl's Kindle. That's where we have the second book. But
Yeah.
I have read the first one, so yes, there are dwarves in the first one.
If they're, like, just mentioned, they're really in the peripheral.
Right.
I keep saying It's because I'm trying to go back through and get back to the first book and think about what's in the second book and what I can't say because it's in the third book, and it's a little bit hard.
Well, just treat it like you're trying not to spoil the first and second books either, because again,
Right.
people that are hopefully listening
True.
to this want to be introduced to the world of the Song of Souls trilogy.
Yeah.
You know, they got to start with book one anyway.
And it's really hard to give descriptions of the books and not you have to think about it the whole time and think, can I say this? Or can't I say this? But what about this? There's this inner monologue happening in my head right now about what can be said and what can't. So it was hard. There are little tricks, like I will go look at fantasy name generators and look at those for ideas for names, and then I might find something I like and change it up a little bit. The village that she's from is actually, I think, an auto repair shop in my town. She's from a village called Brittendale, and I was with my friend as I was writing it, and I saw this sign that said Brittendale, and I'm like, oh, that's a name. I changed the spelling a little bit, you know, but just little things like that. There are definitely things that are inspired by stuff I see. There's a location that they go to that is named after a lake in Missouri,
Okay.
which I changed a little bit as well. I look up a lot of Celtic names and then change them just slightly. I'll look up the meaning of a name if I want a character to have a, like, so that's another fun thing people can do is if they, you know, they could look up the meaning of a character's name, and sometimes it does relate to who that character is. It's just a few rare occasions where those are actually little clues.
Right.
The hardest part is planting the hints and the seeds for stuff that you aren't going to really show till maybe the end of the second book or even the third book. Those are the harder parts, and then keeping it going.
Well, did you have a table of contents, bullet points, throughout the writing of the trilogy, where it's like, in this book I want to hit these key points that'll lead to this book and these key points, and they'll lead to this book and these key points? Or was it all pretty much organic? Wherever you cut off, that's where you cut off, and then you had to think about it in the next book on how to make that end tie into this end?
It was a bit of a mix
Okay.
of both of them. Some things I actually knew the ending. I knew that there were two possible endings from the get-go.
Okay.
I had not decided until toward the end of the second book which ending I was going to go with.
Oh, wow.
Because but I knew I kind of had to see how it played out and how I felt about the characters and how I felt about the world before I could decide how it was going to end.
Hey, I'm just envisioning you being in a very bad mood one day. They're writing out the last page and fuck it, they're doomed in book 3.
I mean, I do like to hurt them. And the bad thing is, the more I like a character, the more I'm like, you're going to suffer.
Well, remind me never to ask to be a character in one of your books.
I mean, wouldn't it be fun, though? I could give you, like, some awesome, epic death. They're just, like, you could be, like, make it as gruesome as possible. And I'm like, on it. Here we go.
Well, now that you said it that way.
I'm pantomiming typing.
Well, now that you said it that way, especially since I know that this is not the end of your writing career, with the end of this trilogy, you are talking about doing other ventures.
Mm-hmm.
So.
There will be a prequel. It's kind of a prequel. It's a prequel in the sense that The Hobbit is a prequel to Lord of the Rings. It's not really a prequel, but there are some tie-ins.
Right.
And there is going to be at least one spin-off, but I have not decided if it will be its own trilogy, and it will be with different characters.
But it's still going to be within the canon of
right.
these 3 books.
Yes. And there is one main character who later on down the road might get his or her own book.
Well, let me ask you this then. I'm a huge fan of Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, or R.A. Salvatore, and they've brought us great characters that have tied into an umbrella title, if you will, with their individual stories. The same way as we have like 6 or 7 podcasts here, all under the umbrella name of Realm of the Myths Entertainment.
Yes.
Will this trilogy spawn its own brand, if you will? I mean, will it all be Song of Souls, or is Song of Souls the trilogy itself, and you're going to give the series its own overarching title?
Yeah. Song of Souls is in and of itself the trilogy. Okay. That story is going to be started and ended there. The other characters might, weave in and out. Some of the characters might weave in and out of different stories, but probably not as main characters, except perhaps one of them. I'm not going to say never. One of these days I may wake up and they're whispering in my head that they have a story to tell.
Right.
But as of right now, they don't. It was kind of sad when I finished. They were just quiet. For like 5-6 years, I always kind of had, not that I was like schizophrenic and actually had voices, but their voices and that story was there. And then when I finished, it just wasn't. And it was sad and quiet and satisfying at the same time.
Peace and purpose.
Yeah.
Let me just twist that knife to all the Star Wars fans right there with that phrase.
No.
But no, I mean, so there is an idea of an a brand title that will connect all the stories together in some way, shape, or form. A Dragonlance, if you will, to your stories.
I haven't actually thought about giving it a brand title. This is actually the first time I've ever considered that. The plan has not been to do that, but it could happen. They'll definitely be interwoven, and I don't plan on only writing these books. I plan on branching out. It's just, and in fact, I'm hoping that once this is finished, either I'll write the sort of prequel next. It will be a little while because I get a break.
Hey, I could always use help with Born Another Man.
You gotta write your own stories, though. I can't write someone else's. People are always going, "You want to write something with me?" no. Or no, it's not with me because I'm a little more open to that. But when someone says, "Will you write something for me?" I'm like, I can't. It's not my story. I can't write it for you.
Right? No.
But
I'll co-author though. I really do got to get booked by that book. But yeah, this.
Yeah, I do have some stuff I want to do in different worlds. I say that, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this one will always be the one that kind of knocking at the door, taking priority.
Well, let me ask you this: with the Song of Souls Trilogy complete, and once it releases, when's the release date for the third book?
August 15th.
August 15th.
It would have been my dad's birthday. And since he actually died before any of them came out, it was really important to me to have the last one come out on his birthday.
That's fitting. That's really fitting. But with that being said, and I know you want to delve back into their world eventually, the characters and everything else, the other projects that you may have in mind, are they going to still be high fantasy, or are you going to be trying your hand at, say, Dune?
Never Dune, because I don't think I could do that. I love Dune, by the way. One of them is kind of sci-fi. It's futuristic, anyway, one of the ideas. And I'm also considering doing a period piece that has some paranormal elements to it.
Okay.
So that one is, if I do it, and it's a massive if, that's something I would probably be working on with someone else. And then I also want to delve into a little bit, maybe Arthurian legend and some possible ways to do that. Not necessarily in a modern world, but not in a way people expect.
Okay, but you're talking about like knights and all, but in more of the realistic mindset as opposed to the Dungeons and Dragons-esque over-the-top fantasy medieval worlds.
Right. It would definitely delve more into Arthurian legend. It would actually have some stuff to do with reincarnation, which I don't actually believe in, but I find really fascinating. So I would like to...
So you're talking about the rebirth of King Arthur.
Maybe.
Ooh.
Maybe someone else.
Can I be King Arthur? I can have a horrific death.
Pretty sure King Arthur is King Arthur.
Yeah, but his soul is resurrected in me, and then I die as I pass along Excalibur to your hero. Yeah.
I might, but who says I'm gonna do the Arthurian legend the way people think it is?
No, that's true. No, it sounds interesting. I mean, it definitely. I'm curious about your sci-fi, and being a big sci-fi fan. Like, I'd say I love fantasy, but I love sci-fi just a smidge more. You know what I mean? So, like, again, with Star Wars, Star Trek, Dune, Battlefield Earth. You know, not just the movies, but like the books and stuff like that.
Right.
So, you know, I'm super excited to hear you got a sci-fi idea. I'd love to see what you're going to do with that.
It's kind of sci-fi. It's not sci-fi necessarily in like the spaceships and everything way. I would just say it's sci-fi in that it's futuristic, but it definitely has sci-fi elements, and it's one that I do plan on actually writing. It's just a very complicated plot, and it's going to take time for me to get it figured out.
Right. No. I don't
it's a super complicated plot for that one, and I'm like, am I smart enough to do this? I really am having those. Am I smart enough for this?
Well, it's not like I expected to be on my front porch next week. I'll give you 2 weeks on that.
Oh, yay. So it'll be out before the third book.
There you go.
Let me just start writing that, like, last year.
Well, the big thing I'm going to ask you, because again I haven't read the book 2 yet, but you were just talking about how you like the bridge story and how that's usually where everything falls to shit for the characters and everything else without spoiling. Because again, I don't want to give anything away to people that haven't read the books yet, myself included.
Right.
But would you say that you pretty much did that with book 2? And if so, is book 2 out of your trilogy your favorite?
The answer you're going to get is wait until the third book is out to read book 2. Because otherwise you might, I don't know, kill me a little. I may or may not have been yelled at a few times by people.
Nice.
I don't know that it's my favorite. I don't. There are things about it I am happier with than with Soulbound, but I think it's really just a matter of experience and growing and knowing the world and knowing what I was doing a little bit better.
Gaining your own confidence in your story and what you were doing, yeah.
I will say that you learn what's really going on in book 2.
Nice. Now, see, now I got to yell at Jen to give up the Kindle because I got to read it. I've got to read it. I do. I don't know how many times since I rushed through reading book 1 so I could review it for you, and during that time, book 2 came out.
Yeah, because it came out either shortly before or shortly after I started doing Realm of the Mist. I think it was right around that time. There was not a big difference in time.
Right. And we went out after we got the book. We went out and Jen found it on Amazon, and she ordered it for her Kindle, and it sat on her Kindle forever. And I'm like, well, I can't read it till she reads it, so I got to wait on her. But I got to read this book, especially before the third one comes out.
Oh yeah. And then another thing to do would be possibly go back and read the first one after you've read the second one and see if you pick up on any of the little things I put in there.
Yeah, because there were some things I said in the review that I didn't really catch the meaning of.
Right, I was super subtle with some of my hints because I really wanted Soulbound to have a satisfying enough ending that it could stand alone in case it took a while for me to get the third one out.
Well, here's a good question then, because I know that when you first had conception of the idea of the Song of Souls trilogy, it was literally just Song of Souls. It was one story, kind of how George Lucas's Star Wars was one story that he had to break into 3 parts.
But the first one was always going to be Soulbound. Song of Souls came up when I decided to make it a trilogy.
Okay, fair enough. Well, Soulbound was going to be one full, complete story, and you had to break it up. So
right.
I lost my train of thought on what I was going to say. Oh yeah, with the fact that you did have to separate it into 3 separate stories, would you say that now that the third book is about to come out, are you more excited for people to be able to read all 3 books together, or was it more exciting releasing them individually and making people wait for the next one because they sat there and speculated that much more often?
Oh, I don't know, because it's both a little. I like when people speculate, and I like that people are like, "Oh, what's gonna happen?" But at the same time, I am so tired of not telling people what's gonna happen. I want to tell the spoilers. It takes all of my self-control not to do it. All of it. Like, my really close friends, I'm always like, "Do you want a spoiler?" I'm really bad about that. Like, the ones that have been really kind of right in there from the beginning. Sometimes I offer them spoilers, and they usually say no. They have more self-control than I do.
Well, here's a question: since they're your in crowd, they're your pizza shop jury. If it's Bon Jovi reference for those that don't know, when he released "Slippery When Wet," before they recorded the album, they played it at a pizza shop in New Jersey, the songs, to a bunch of people they invited in to find out if they thought that the songs were decent. Mm-hmm. Then it later became known as the pizza shop jury. So your own personal pizza shop jury, did any of them wind up being characters in your books, or at least representative of characters in your books?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, actually, one of the main characters, the wizard, is based off a very, very close friend who is not someone who knows any of the spoilers because he didn't want them. But yeah, Lysander is based off of a really dear friend who was just absolutely there for me after my husband died. And then another character is based off of a friend of mine. And then there are some minor characters that are based off of friends. Actually, all of my siblings have a character in there. Only one of them is even a semi-main character, and I'm going to shame my brother right now because my book has been out for 5 years, and the other one has been the one that his character is in has been out for a couple of years. He's the only sibling who hasn't read my books.
Well, I was about to ask, do the people that are represented as characters, like the wizard, do they know that's them, or did they pick up on it when they read the books?
They know that's them, because I let them know ahead of time. And also, my friend has a beagle, which is why the wizard has a beagle. And the beagle's real name is Bradley. In the book, it's Bailey, but the dog's real name is Bradley, and he is as sweet and cuddly and awesome as he is in the book.
All right, guys. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and move the conversation on. But before we do, guys, go to the website right now. Go to the merch page. Go pick up Soulbound, the first book of the Song of Souls trilogy, and of course you'll be able to look up the Song of Souls book 2, which is
Soulfire.
Soulfire. Thank you. I always tongue tie on that. Soulfire. That link will be up on the merchandise page soon. But you could, like I said, when it takes you to the Amazon page, you could just look up Soulfire to get book 2. Go pick up these books before August 15th, so that way you're set for the release of the third and final book of the Song of Souls trilogy by Christen Stovall. Guys, it's an awesome series. It's definitely an up and coming in the fantasy genre. You guys will not be disappointed in it.
Billy Boyd owns a copy.
That's
he
true.
He played Pippin in Lord of the Rings. He owns a copy.
That is true, and I'm not gonna lie. When this episode releases, I'm gonna send it to people like John Jackson Miller. Maybe they'll buy a book.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe. And
if you guys like it, leave a review. If you don't, I mean, you can do other stuff with your time. You don't have to leave reviews.
There you go. But we're going to stay on the fantasy forum, and actually right now we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into the fact that one of your major inspirations was Lord of the Rings. We were pretty much in this whole entire conversation, everybody could pick up on that.
Really? How? It's so subtle.
I don't know. I think it's back in the big when we were talking about Star Trek Discovery that I really picked up that you're a Lord of the Rings fan.
Also, I said I wrote Lord of the Rings fan fiction. That may have been a clue.
That may have been a clue. See, she's testing to see if I'm paying attention. You had mentioned, well, a lot of people do know, but you had mentioned that there is a Lord of the Rings TV series coming.
Yes.
To Amazon, is it?
Yeah, I believe it's Amazon.
And Amazon Prime is releasing the Lord of the Rings TV series.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously from your reaction right there, you are super excited to delve back into the world of Middle-earth.
Especially since, according to everything I read, it's supposed to, focus on the elves. I love the elves. There used to be a thing back when Lord of the Rings was out. When you really liked elves, you were called a pervy elf fancier.
Okay.
I own the name because I love elves.
Hey, look, when I saw the Peter Jackson movie, I'll admit it, Orlando Bloom was the prettiest girl in the movie.
He was pretty. He
was pretty.
Always. Yeah. He's gotten a little squidgy around the edges now, but
Elrond needed to shade that 5 o'clock shadow though.
I have a friend who absolutely loves Elrond, and through her and her writing, I suddenly went, oh, okay, yeah, he's kind of sexy.
Well, since you do have more information on this TV series than I do at the moment, has there been any leakage or statements yet on on what time frame this takes place within the Lord of the Rings mythos, or basically, is it like a prequel? Is it a sequel? Is it something that's happening during the War of the Ring?
It's definitely before the Lord of the Rings. I don't know that they've outright said Silmarillion, but they have said things that kind of sound like it might be dealing with that time era.
Okay.
Definitely earlier on with the elves, and it will be amazing. I'm not biased.
Now, are we talking about...
It better be amazing, or I will be very upset.
Are we talking about the Rivendell elves, or are we talking about the ones that were being led by Kate Winslet's character, which for some reason the name is escaping me?
It might be different elves entirely, but a lot of the elves, because they're immortal, they were even if it's not about Rivendell or Lothlorien, some of the elves still could have been involved at that time. There was a place called Gondolin. It might have to do with that place and those elves, and that may have been men. I don't have the history as well memorized as other fans do, because I used to, and then I decided to write my own book and make that history, and my brain can only handle so much of that information. So although I had a friend once tell me that my brain was a database of useless information.
And that's why
which is accurate.
That's why you're on Realm of the Mist podcast.
I made it useful. I made a book trilogy. See? It was useful.
I'm right there with you, sister. I created a podcast because I had a brain full of useless information.
You made it useful. There you go.
Let's talk about entertainment and movies and TV, and I could spout out useless facts that I've known my whole entire life that nobody's given a shit about until now.
Exactly. Until it became really cool to be a nerd.
I know what color underwear Peter Parker used to wear.
Exactly.
I don't, but
Well, I mean, you've really dropped the ball on that one, but there's a lot of useless information out there, and you can only retain so much.
That's it, yeah. So,
Priorities.
But do we have a release date on when the first season or the pilot should drop? I
don't think so, but I could be wrong on that. Everything I've seen has had the same information where it's like it's going to be about the elves and it's going to be before Lord of the Rings, like the early stories of the elves. But okay, like you were saying before, Tolkien went into a lot of detail, right, and a lot of history. So that could be anything. There's a lot to go through.
Well, do you think? Well, let me ask you this. That we'll go into a little bit of speculation here. Do you think that we'll delve into anything dealing with the Ring of Power, or the other rings that tie into the Ring of Power, the ones that were gifted to the elves and the men and the dwarves? And
I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised if for no other reason than fan service. But it may not ever really be anything except they mention this thing and Lord of the Rings obsessed people go, it means the thing that I know, and they just wig out like I will inevitably do.
Nice save there, because almost for a second I could hear all the fans listening of Lord of the Rings going, dude, she's picking on us. Like no, I will inevitably do. Oh yeah. Well, she's one of us. She's got it.
We know our language. We all know we're guilty of it.
No, I love the movies, and I did read the books, and it kind of falls under the same thing as I was saying about Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. The 6th book was my favorite book, but it was the worst movie.
Yeah, it really was.
My favorite Lord of the Rings book was actually The Hobbit.
Which is not technically Lord of the Rings.
Which is not technically Lord of the Rings, but it ties into the Lord of the Rings. I liked the trilogy, but I really loved the Hobbit book.
Right.
So I was super excited for the Hobbit movies.
And then they tried to make the Hobbit movies the Lord of the Rings instead of just letting them be the Hobbit.
Yeah, they really pissed me off with that.
Well, Tolkien himself said that he wrote that as more of a children's book. It was never meant to be the large-scale epic that Lord of the Rings was. It was meant to be a self-contained, fun story.
Well, yeah, its only tie-in to the Lord of the Rings was Bilbo getting the ring.
Right. And originally, I was just reading this the other day, and I have not fact-checked it, but I would assume it's probably factual because people know things about Tolkien. Originally, it was not going to be the One Ring. His publishers told him to do that.
Really?
Yeah.
What was it originally going to be?
According to what I read, it was just going to be a magical ring.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to put the fact claimer on there that the disclaimer that I didn't delve really deeply into fact checking on that, but that's I've heard in other places too that.
Well, it makes kind of sense because I mean the trilogy or the books themselves was known as the Lord of the Rings.
Exactly.
Plural.
Yeah.
and now we're talking about the one ring, singular. It's almost like all the other rings that were gifted to the men, to the dwarves, to the elves.
I was sitting there going, "Is he going to get it right?"
Is they're nothing. They're just jewelry compared to the one ring. So, isn't this supposed to be a story of multiple rings?
Right.
Which in the long run, as far as the film franchise is concerned, couldn't there be other One Rings? Obviously,
well, I
Tolkien,
mean, they just call it that because he was the lord of all the rings that he made, and it was about Sauron. That jerk.
That jerk.
I mean, he ruins every family reunion, and you cannot keep clear eyes around him. Like, you just go through it like crazy.
You just have not forgiven him after that 111th birthday.
No. You do not crash somebody's 111th birthday. That's just rude. God.
I'm proud of myself that I didn't tongue tie that.
I did a little bit. So
11 years. 11 years. Oh man, that's a hard one. Every time even from the movie, the first time I watched the movie, I had to sit there and it's like, did he just say it the way I think he said it?
Yeah, and if you listen, he actually does tongue tie a little bit when he's saying it.
Yes, he does. The
actor. He's like, yeah, you can tell his tongue is going, I've just got to get this line out. This one part.
I got Carrie Fisher talking about Star Wars, the dialogue of Star Wars in my ear right now as we're talking about this and him flubbing the line or tongue tying on the line, and I just hear her saying, "You could write this stuff, but you can't actually say it."
It's like Star Trek technobabble.
Yeah. But yeah, super excited for a Lord of the Rings show. Definitely want to see what they're gonna do with that.
Just hopefully they do it right.
Well, I was about to say, hopefully this is the redemption for the embarrassment that was the Hobbit trilogy.
Could have been so good.
It could have. It really could. Especially because the lead dwarf, the one that played Doran.
Doran?
Doran, the lead dwarf. The actor was phenomenal.
Richard Armitage. He's great.
Yeah, the character was wonderful.
Yeah, I actually became a fan of his when he was doing a Robin Hood series for the BBC, and he played Sir Guy. He was like a bad guy, but he was fantastic in that role.
Sir Guy Gisborne.
Yeah, absolutely stole every scene he was in.
Wow.
You should look it up and see it. It's a little it was obviously made for kids and everything, but it is worth just watching him in that role.
I'll definitely have to check that out because, like I said, he was one of the biggest things that I took away from that movie or that movie trilogy. It's like he was phenomenal.
Oh, he was.
It's too bad the movies were horrible.
And it was because they added all this extra stuff instead of sticking with the source material and respecting it for what it was.
Oh, like the singing fat goblin? I don't
every
forgive
time
that.
I say, well, that'll do it, I just think of the fat goblin.
I don't forgive that. We were talking about not forgiving things earlier. I don't forgive that.
Yeah, I also don't forgive him making all of the dwarves that die the hot ones. Could not one of the hot ones been one that lived? I mean, I don't dream about Disney princesses. I dream about Tolkien, or I don't dream about Disney princesses. I dream about the princes, one from the live-action Cinderella, but all the hot dwarfs dead. Not one of the good-looking ones could have been one that lived. Come on, man, respect your girl fan base. We want one hot guy to come away from this.
See, I had a problem with a couple of them not having beards.
I was okay with one of them. I was okay with it. I enjoyed the view.
Well, again,
I was already a fan of that character though, or that actor though.
Right, but coming from a Dungeons and Dragons background and everything else, dwarves have beards. Even the women have fucking beards. Why is this dude clean shaven?
I don't know if all the dwarves in my books have beards. I don't think I actually I delved that deeply into it. But my dwarves are a little bit different as well, so.
Right.
Because I was like, I want to do this, but I want to do it a little different.
Your dwarves were more like Tyrion in Game of Thrones. They were little people. They weren't necessarily a race of being dwarves.
Yeah, they're kind of, I mean, in my head, they're sort of a race of being dwarves, but I do view them more as little people.
Right. You know, and speaking of Tyrion, hey,
Oh.
for those that don't know, there's this little independent TV show.
Yeah.
On one of those.
It's really obscure.
It's really obscure on one of those like backwater channels called HBO. You know, there's this show based on this book. It's kind of a cult classic.
I think there's something like dragons and ice zombies and stuff like that happening in it. I don't know. Like, only a few people watch it.
And dwarves who fuck anything under the sun while drinking things.
They drink and they know things.
They drink and they know things. I'm telling you, I'm gonna get that tattooed on my like butt or something. I swear to God, that's the greatest line ever.
I was just waiting for you to say it was gonna be your butt. I was expecting the word ass, but.
Yes, we're talking about the final season of Game of Thrones has started, and we are 2 episodes out of 6 in.
Oh, God. Yeah, after next week, the final season will be halfway over.
Oh, my God. It's so heartbreaking, isn't it? I mean, each season,
it is.
Each season up until, like, last season was always 10 episodes anyway. So, I mean,
Right.
we're only losing 4 episodes, but, God, we lost 4 episodes.
And it's the last season, so we lost 4 of the last episodes.
And we lost 3 the season before because there was only 7 episodes in season 7. So, you know, it's so heartbreaking. But can we, first off, obviously you're caught up.
Yeah.
Okay, and I know.
Oh, yeah.
I know
Oh, yeah.
episode 2. I know episode 2 just came out yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, I'm going to warn you now, guys. We're going to be spoiler on this. So at this point, if you have not seen that episode yet, if it's on your DVR or whatever, you may want to pause this and go watch the movie before we talk about it.
Yes.
You know, so you've been warned.
Yes. Fair warning. You have been warned. Carry on at your own peril. We do not have the Men in Black flashy thing.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and play this right here real quick. You won't hear it, but the fans will.
Oh, you fucking twat. We got ourselves a fucking spoiler.
There we go. The little spoiler warning from our good friend Richard J., who gave it to us a long time ago, who, while sitting on a toilet, said, "Hey, you dizzy cunt, you got ourselves a fucking spoiler." In his Welsh accent, so.
Is it a real Welsh accent?
He's really Welsh, yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, when you listen to the replay, you'll hear it at this point. So.
Nice.
But
except I'll have to just go past every part where I talk because I can't stand the sound of my own voice when I hear it recorded. I'm like, oh God, do I sound that way?
So you guys listening in, you've been warned. You know, if you don't want this season of Game of Thrones spoiled for you thus far, stop listening, go watch the episodes, and then come back. Okay, but we're going to be talking about season 1 and 2, and then we're going to be speculating about what we see.
Episode 1 and 2.
Sorry, episode 1 and 2, and then we'll be speculating about what we see in the foreseeable future.
Death. It's Game of Thrones, so probably death and sex.
Well, I think we could talk about episode 1 and 2 simultaneously because everything really thus far is tying in together.
Episode 1 should have been named Reunions that we don't need to see every single one of.
It really could, but there were some takeaways, like Samwell Tarly finally, the big spoiler, you know, telling Jon Snow that his real lineage is that he is Aegon Targaryen, the 6th of his name, and the rightful heir to the Iron Throne.
Iron Throne. Yes, I was really surprised they revealed that this early in the season. I expected them to draw that out for a couple episodes at least, because they kind of have done that in the past, where there's something coming and they just like sort of give you little snippets and snippets and snippets, and then finally they let it happen. So I was fully expecting that to be the case with this. I did not expect it in the first episode.
Well, what were you expecting? They wouldn't reveal it until like after they defeated the Night King's army and defeated Cersei and took over King's Landing. And as Dany's handing up to the throne, that's when Samwise.
Excuse me.
Hold on.
That's his chair. That's his seat. No, I thought maybe it'd be like in the second or third episode.
Okay.
You know, I just figured maybe there would be bigger concerns than that right away, since there's an army of ice zombies coming to eat their faces off. Although I don't think ice zombies do a lot of face eating. I think there's just death.
Yeah, kill, and then all of a sudden you're my brother.
Kill. Now let's go hang out.
Yeah, kill you.
Now let's go chill.
We'll kill you. We'll get you some blue eyes. It's all good. Come on. Let's
Great. Get you some contacts. You can join the group. That's Ed back over there.
All right.
He makes he's great. He's great. Don't ask him about last Wednesday. Trust me.
Has anybody seen my leg?
Exactly.
Oh man, but
yeah.
So that was the major takeaway more than anything else in my mindset for episode 1. Well, that ended the way the episode ended with Jaime Lannister coming into Winterfell.
Yes.
And first
major
person
stare down happening.
Is little beetle boy sitting in the wheelchair staring right back at him.
I saw this fantastic meme that had Jamie, and it said, on top, and then there was a picture of Bran on the bottom, and underneath Jamie it says, "Hi, Bran, do you need a push?" And on Bran it goes, "Do you need a hand?" It's the best. They made my day.
Oh, man. But then obviously we picked up right where that left off in season 2.
There was another big thing in episode 1 with Jon riding a dragon.
Yes, but that was kind of, I
made it a little comic reliefy though.
They made it a little comic reliefy, and I have seen Facebook videos where people did that whole entire scene, and they played Aladdin's A Whole New World.
That's fantastic.
So and that's kind of how it felt, but you could definitely
did, because it ended with them making out and the dragon like being all weird and staring at them.
That was funny to me. The dragon just giving him that look like
it's a little like, all right, I didn't know dragons were into watching.
Well, that one was like, what are you doing to my mommy? Are you hurting my mommy?
I like how he met the dragon's eyes, and he's just like, it's gonna eat me, isn't it? You could just tell that's what he was thinking. Oh God, it's gonna eat me.
But we did have that fantastic reveal, as well as the way the rest of the entourage, Tyrion, Davos, the eunuch, I can't remember his name for the life of me. Varys, thank you.
There's so many names, I really can only remember about a third of them.
Well, that's why I'm trying to stay on the main characters here.
Yeah.
But how they're actually looking at the relationship between Dany and Jon as why can't both rule? Why can't the Seven Kingdoms be ruled by a just queen and a good man?
Yes.
Type deal. So
that was a great line. That was a fantastic line.
It really was. But, again, you got to remember, these people don't know the truth.
Their aunt and nephew. Although Targaryens have a long history of incest.
Right.
And I will just say also that Dany and Jon kind of make you question your moral compass a little bit. Because you're like, oh, it's perfect. Ooh. Oh, but maybe. Oh. But they're so good together.
Well, you know what I equate again. I go back to Star Wars. I equate it back to Empire Strikes Back, when Leia plants that deep, passionate kiss on Luke.
Right.
And we're all weirded out by it now because we now know that Luke and Leia were brother and sister, but they didn't know back then. So when we first saw the little getting together between Dany and Jon, we're like, oh yeah,
and then in the middle of
aunt.
it, they reveal, and you're like, oh. Even though I think a lot of people already kind of had guessed that was the case. I mean, but also point out, like, it's not like incest is completely a foreign idea in royal families, particularly even those close familiar bonds. Like, if you look at our own history, it's happened. Not that I'm justifying it, it's just that, like, it's not an out of nowhere idea that they could still be together.
No, you're not wrong. And especially, like, you talked about, like, it's a battle of moral compass. You're talking about a show that has battled moral compasses since the beginning. Like, we're all rooting for Jaime Lannister, who literally was fucking his sister and pushed a kid out a window for seeing it.
I know, and yet now you like him. You're like, oh, but he's changed.
Like, this show does everything possible to make you question your moral compass.
It really does.
And even more so is the fact that you think about the fact that it did come from a book series from R.R. Martin, which makes you question, like, his sanity and moral compass. You know?
Right.
Now, granted, since season 5, we've been in uncharted territory because there is no book 6 yet. The Winds of Winter has never been released, so there's not even to say that Winds of Winter will end the way that the series, the TV series is going to end. But we're jumping ahead of ourselves here. Where we're at in the TV series, so we pick up where episode 1 left off, of Jaime coming to Winterfell, and now he's standing before the council. He's standing before Jon and Sansa and Daenerys, and Sansa and Daenerys are ready to throw his ass out to the dire wolves. Yeah, they're ready to throw him to the dire wolves. And it was Brienne of Tarth who turns around and saves his dumbass, because even him trying to stand up for even Tyrion trying to stand up for his brother, it's like, well, you also told me you knew your sister. You fucked up there. I'm about to throw your ass to the wolves too. Yeah.
But Brienne of Tarth stood up and said he was a man of honor, and that changed Sansa's mind, at which point Daenerys was outvoted.
Right, and she didn't like that.
No, she did not.
Well, there's a lot of things she doesn't seem to like. Like, again, spoiler. When she's trying to make amends with Sansa, it always comes down to, I want to be your friend, I want to be cool, I want you to
only
fall
on my
in line,
terms.
but only on my terms. And when Sansa turns around and says, well, what about the North? When you take the Iron Throne, what about the North? We swore that we would never bend knee to anyone ever again.
Yeah, and then Winter came into that room hardcore.
Oh, yeah.
There was a chill in the air all of a sudden.
And the same deal as where the season, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself here, but where the episode ended, where we're in the crypts with Jon, and she comes as being kind of loving to him as he's staring at the statue of his mother, and and
he reveals to her
who he is, and her first thought isn't, "Oh God, I fucked my nephew," or
it's, he's got a claim to the throne.
You have a claim to my throne.
Which I think is really telling about that character.
Do we? I was about to ask you. Do we think Dany's going to go the way of the Mad King? Is she so drunk, spending her whole entire life trying to retake the throne and avenge her family? Is she so power drunk by that she's losing sight of what it all meant to begin with?
Yeah. See, and I've wondered about that too. I don't know that she's. I think she's at a point where she could redeem herself. I could see them having it where there's definitely a division for a while, and it looks like they're going to come to odds once the bigger threat of the Night King is over with, but then maybe, at the last minute she does change her mind and everything falls in line. But it's Game of Thrones. You don't know. You can hypothesize all you like, and then they, throw your ideas into fire.
Right.
And you watch them burn, and you're like, all right, I thought that person was going to live.
But my personal opinion is I think Jon's going to renounce the Targaryen name. I think he's going to take the name of Stark. And I think Dany will have the throne.
Possibly.
But I think she will acknowledge, because he is a Targaryen, regardless of the fact that he renounced the name and became a Stark, he will be allowed to rule the North.
Yeah. I also would not be surprised if Dany is pregnant. Because they did an awful lot last season. Oh, I can't have babies. Oh, I can't have babies. Like, she'd meet someone and be like, I can't have babies. And then it ends with those two banging. And I'm like, I suspect you can have babies.
Now, can we talk about the part that, like, I'm man enough to admit I teared up?
Brienne.
Jaime Lannister knighting Brienne of Tarth.
Yes, that was the moment of this episode.
It really was. They were sitting. It set it up for the people. They're sitting in a chamber trying to get warm. They're waiting for the battle because they know
it's like the calm before the storm.
Right. You know, the battle's coming. The Night King and his army are at the doorsteps of Winterfell. They're going to be showing up before the sun rises. So they're all there. They're drinking wine. They're sharing stories. The Dragon's Bane is being his creepy ass self, and they bring up to the conversation about somebody slipping and calling Brienne Sir. Brienne. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh no, I'm sorry, Lady Brienne, because she's not a knight. And Giant Bane was the one who didn't understand. It's like, well, why isn't she a knight? And she admitted that it was tradition. Because she was the woman. Because she was a woman, she's not allowed to be a knight. Which, as creepy as Giant's Bane is, his line of fuck tradition, I'm not a king, but if I was, I'd fucking knight you 10 times a night, or however.
10 times over.
10 times over. The way he said, obviously, he meant that more sexually than anything else.
Yeah, you're like, sexual harassment right here.
But he was the one that really put it into their heads.
Yeah,
like, why do we give a fuck about? There is no king right now. What do we care about?
Not only that, but an army of the undead is getting ready to march on us. Oh, they also have an undead dragon. Like, to hell with tradition at this point.
Mm-hmm. And that's when Jaime stood up and said, actually, you don't need a king. A knight can knight another knight.
Yeah, any knight can create a knight.
And he called her over, said, you want to be a knight or not? Come here and kneel.
And he had to call her over multiple times before she actually got up and did it. And it was phenomenally acted, and just, it was an amazing moment. I'm also a little worried that it has sealed her fate.
Oh, I think she's going to die, but I think she's going to die protecting Jaime.
Yeah.
I still stand that I think it's not going to be Tyrion. It's not going to be Jon. It's not going to be Dany. It is going to be Jaime Lannister who puts the sword through Cersei.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I totally on board with you on that one. I think he's an in-game player. Now, whether he'll survive the final episode, I don't know, but I think he's an in-game player.
I fully believe his redemption of being the Kingslayer, even though he has nothing to be redeemed for in that aspect.
No, because it was actually very heroic, but I think he's going to be put in the position of being the Queenslayer.
Mm-hmm. He's gonna wind up becoming the Queenslayer again for the exact same reasons, protecting the people.
But he won't have the shame with it this time if he survives.
No,
I wouldn't be surprised if they kill each other.
Now, there is rumor going around. I'm going to ask you, because the dragons have only interacted with 3 people in the show, 2 of which we know are Targaryens.
Right. There's that fan theory that Tyrion, Jaime, and Cersei are Targaryens too.
I don't know about Jaime and Cersei, but there is rumor of Tyrion is actually a Targaryen and not the child of Tywin Lannister.
Yeah, I don't know how much I buy into it. On the one hand, yeah, maybe. On the other hand, with Jon, there was a lot of stuff put in to kind of steer you in that direction.
Right.
So, I don't know. If it happens, I guess, cool. I'll kind of be like, really? Another? Like, this is like, did they just go around having secret Targaryen babies and hiding them? So if dragons showed up again, there'd be people to ride them? But no one knows that they can ride them, so how good is that plan?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of fan theories around. I mean, there's fan theories of who's going to sit on the Iron Throne at the end of it.
Right.
Some people feel it's going to be Tyrion. I've read fan theories where they thought, oh my God, the spider. again, because I forgot his name. It's a V again.
Varys?
Varys, thank you. I keep wanting to say Valerian, but I know that's the Steel.
That's the Steel.
You know, Varys.
Maybe there's already some Valerian in there.
You know, there's been fan theories that Varys, the guy who's been playing the game better than anybody in the show, is the one that winds up on the throne at the end. I've seen fan theories of Grey Worm.
I've seen a fan theory that Sansa does, which I think is actually kind of an interesting one, but I don't think it'll happen.
I've heard Arya.
Yeah, Arya, I don't think would ever happen because I don't think Arya would do it.
Oh, can we talk about the creepy moment?
It didn't. Initially, it creeped me out, and then I'm like, oh, well, it's Game of Thrones. I should have expected it.
Well, no. I think it creeped me out because of the fact that, like, we've watched this girl grow up, and now we're seeing her naked and fucking.
Yeah, there was that moment of awkward where you're like, oh, put your clothes back on. I saw you as a kid. But
the way I could equate it is I got a 10-year-old daughter. Now, when she was younger, I used to see her run around naked all the time. It didn't faze me. You know, it's usually just go get in the tub or whatever. Right. Now, because she's 10 years old, anytime I even see her in her underwear, it's like, come on.
Dear God, no.
You know what I mean? So
right.
I'm looking at Maisie Williams, the actress, who I watched be this little girl in season 1 of Game of Thrones, who's now stripping naked to go fuck Robert Baratheon's bastard. Gimtree. And I'm just like, no, put your clothes back on.
I guess they did leave it totally up to her how much she wanted to take off and how much she wanted to show. And that's where she was. The thing that I get that I thought about right away, again, it's the thing where I'm a writer and then I'm just going to puke words everywhere. Right. The thing that caught my attention right away is how awkward it may have been for her and for him, for the actors, because he saw her as a little girl. Like, he's known this person as a little girl, and then here she is taking her clothes off. So that had to have been awkward.
Right. You know, because my first thought, like, when I'm watching the episode, because I watched the episode today. I literally watched it earlier today. And my first thought was, how old is Maisie now?
I think she's in her 20s now.
But that was my first thought. I'm like, is she legal now? Like, how far are we pushing these boundaries?
It does not help that she has a very, very youthful face as well.
Yes.
Her face did not mature as much as one would think. And I think it's because it's so round. She just has a very round, youthful face. And so, like, you look at her, and she's always been in these costumes that have really concealed her body. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy to not have really viewed her as growing up like you do the other characters.
No, you're not wrong. You're definitely not wrong. But, like, again, you know, I'm starting to see flesh. I'm starting to see flesh on her, and you're right. She's got that baby fat face.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, which makes it cute and youthful. But then she's got those killer eyes, and I don't mean killer like beautiful. I mean killer like she will slit your fucking throat. They're a little bit
dead inside.
Oh yeah, she's got this death stare down to a fucking science.
Oh yeah, it's brilliant. And you see her in interviews, and she doesn't have that at all. It is just pure acting chops pulling it off.
Oh, absolutely, and I applaud her 120,000%. But as she's stripping away clothes, and I'm like, okay, when it first started and they start kissing, I'm like, okay, they're gonna have a little love thing, and they're starting to act like they're unbuckling belts and untying straps, and I'm like, they're
fade to black. You're thinking fade to black, right?
Yeah, I'm like, they're gonna cut scene right here. We know what's gonna happen. No, all of a sudden her boobs are out, and I'm just sitting there like, again, my first thought is she's legal, right? We're not pushing any we ain't pushing any boundaries here. Okay, yeah, she's got to be at least 18. But wait, I've watched this girl grow up. I don't want to see her naked. The fuck is wrong with these people?
Yeah, I definitely had that moment. But the moment Game of Thrones ceased to shock me with anything was when they burned that little girl on the pyre. And I was like, well, they're going to do anything and everything now. And in terms of horrible deaths, everybody brings up the Red Wedding, which is awful because Robb was my very favorite character. And in fact, I picture one of my characters in my book as him. So I had like this complete meltdown when he died. But I've only watched it once. But in my opinion, the worst death in this entire series was when they put a little girl on a pyre and burned her to death. Why is this never brought up with the worst deaths.
I will half agree with you because we got to actually see the little girl on the pyre and they light the fire. That is disturbing. But the Red Wedding, remember the first act was stabbing Rob's wife in the fucking belly with the baby in the belly.
Right. No, I think they're equally awful. Nobody ever brings up the pyre thing.
Like we sit here, Star Wars fans, we sit here and we analyze to death the fact that Anakin Skywalker killed a bunch of younglings in the Jedi Council when he turned to Vader.
Right.
But at least he didn't stab a pregnant woman in the belly during a wedding or burn a child on the stake, while their parents stood there and watched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Red Wedding I can't watch. I get really upset because I'm like, no, that's Karen and I didn't give you permission to kill him. And if anybody's going to be mean to him, it's me. Oh, right, this is not really him and I can't say what they do.
Oh, my God. But yeah, I mean, and of course, another one that actually got the feels a little bit to me was Theon.
Yes,
Returning.
Theon and Sansa.
Theon, is there a spark of romance there? I
wondered that too, but then I thought, well, maybe it's more of a brother-sister thing that we, and they also have been through something really horrible. So I think it was open to interpretation. Because my mom didn't get that at all from it, and I was like, I don't know, maybe.
I don't know. I saw some attraction, and
I mean, he's totally biting it this next episode. He is biting it.
You think Theon's down?
Oh, he's going down. What is left in his story arc?
Him getting his cock back.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Why not?
So
why not?
They don't know
Arya
how
got
to put
her
it
eyes
back on.
Arya got her eyes back, and other people got other body parts back in Game of Thrones. They cured fucking Stone Skin.
It's not gonna happen. They set him up to die.
So the Red Woman couldn't come around. I mean, Jon Snow came back from the dead. We couldn't figure out how to resurrect the dick. Come on, Theon paid a hard price for this show. Give him that much.
He did. I like Theon. I mean, of course, you despise him for a while.
Right.
But then everything that he goes through, he does redeem himself. And you're like, okay, you paid. You paid. You've paid.
Yeah, he was just a hornball that wanted to impress his dad. He didn't deserve what he's gone through.
I mean, he did order the death of 2 little boys. They weren't the Stark boys, but he did order the death of 2 little boys.
Right, but he was doing it to protect. But he did it to protect the Stark kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks that he chose 2 commoners that didn't mean as much, but he did try to protect Bran and
I don't remember the other one's name.
Rickon.
Yeah, Bran and the one Stark kid who literally doesn't matter.
The one who couldn't figure out how to zigzag.
Like, seriously, he is the one Stark kid who has nothing. Who did nothing. He did nothing except run in a straight line.
Exactly. He would have survived had he just zigzagged. Yeah.
I mean, I guess one could argue that Ramsay could have traced, but would have been harder.
Is it just me? During the time that Sir Davos was dishing out the soup, and he explained to the one dude who said, "I wasn't a soldier. I'm not a soldier." Blah blah blah. And he turned around. He's like, "I was there at the Battle of the Bastards." Was it just me that felt awkward to hear the title actually be spoken aloud?
No, because I knew that it was called that. Like, I've heard them say it in other things as well.
Okay, because to me it sounded a little weird. Like
something we do need to mention, though. Okay. And you can finish your thought, but I just remembered it, and don't let me forget to bring it up.
No, feel free.
So, I was just... All right, they're all like, let's put the helpless people, the women... Well, women aren't helpless, but, like, the ones that can't fight, and kids, and old people, and injured people, down in the crypts to keep them safe.
With a bunch of dead bodies.
What tends to happen to dead bodies when the Night King shows up?
That is something that did cross my mind. It's almost like, opening the buffet to a bunch of starving fat people.
Yeah. And they kept all through the episode going, oh, they're going to go down to be safe in the crypts. And I'm like, with the waiting zombies? the like freeze dried zombies. They're gonna be down in there.
Oh God!
This has occurred to no one.
Oh God! Give me Sean Bean returning as Ned Stark as a fucking zombie.
Oh,
Give it to me. You just made me excited. Let that happen. I want to see him bust out of his own
tomb.
his own tomb through his own statue, and he's half broken and beaten. And
Oh, but his head would be like in one arm. He's carrying his head.
he's
in the
carrying his
arm.
head and shit. Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to see the Starks come back though. If they did that and like Rob came back, I would lose my. I cannot. I can't even go back and rewatch the series because I cannot watch them kill Rob again. Can't do it. He was my favorite character. Not as attached to anybody else, but.
Oh my God, it would be beautiful to see it happen, and especially just to have Sean Bean do it. Yeah.
Yeah, just Sean Bean, like. And then he would get to die twice in the series.
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
Well, he's made a career out of dying in shows and movies.
Very good at dying.
He's
It's
very,
just-
very good at dying.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there was a best death category in film and TV awards. Like, he would just always win. Because no one else will have had the like, he'll be nominated for, like, 5 different deaths every year.
Well, I was about to say, could you imagine, like, God forbid, somewhere in the future he dies, and they do the immemorial video of him at the Oscars, and it's all his death scenes.
You know when he dies, someone's gonna do that on YouTube. Someone will do it.
You know, because you're right. He's a master of dying. You know, he's a master of dying, and he's a master of being the guy who redeems himself as he dies.
Yeah. Yeah.
That seems to be the story arc for most characters he's ever played.
Yeah. I have seen one movie in which he didn't die. And it was years and years and years ago when I was just little bitty. He was in the live action version of Black Beauty. And he's not a big part, but dude does not die.
And that's why the movie's not very memorable.
Because Sean Bean didn't die.
Learn from your
They
mistakes.
cursed it.
You want a successful movie or a TV show, have
Kill
Sean
Sean
Bean
Bean.
in it and kill him.
It's like a Hollywood sacrifice that has to be made. Sean Bean's character must be sacrificed to the gods of entertainment.
Exactly. But, so...
Just as a thing, though, no one really sacrificed Sean Bean. We need Sean Bean.
No, he's got to stick around for a while. But, okay, so real quick, let's get into the speculations, what you think. I know we want to ask who's going to eat it next episode because shit's about to hit the fan. But let's really get into it. Who do you think, in the end, who wins the Iron Throne?
Yeah, and I have gone around and around and around on this, and I just can't decide. I know that I would actually really like to see Sansa just because I think it would be a logical and surprising conclusion to her art. Like, even though it would be surprising, there would be a level of logic to it. If you just watch how her characters progressed, I don't think it will happen. I don't know. Because I could really easily see Jon dying as he takes out the Night King.
I will stand on the grounds of what I've said from the beginning. I think Tyrion takes the throne. I think that's the whole purpose of Tyrion's arc. You know, his intelligence, his willingness to fight when he needs to, but has been the most intelligent character, going wits against people like the Spider, and going wits against Littlefinger, and going wits against his own father, and being a survivor character. I see him sitting on a throne at the end, the worthless dwarf character that everybody dismissed throughout the whole series.
Possibly. I have heard rumors that supposedly are plot leaks that he betrays them and bites it.
Don't do that. I love Tyrion. If there has been one constant in this show that from day one I've loved the character of, and he's never made me question why I loved him, is Tyrion fucking Lannister. Don't take that away from me, god damn it.
I'm gonna take it. I mean, but anytime you hear any kind of plot leak or anything like that, it's so, like, questionable. Until it's actually straight up and confirmed, it's so questionable.
Absolutely, but I think it's almost like we were joking about, like if Dany takes the throne and gives Jon the North and lets it be two separate kingdoms or whatever. All that's predictable. And one thing I've learned about Game of Thrones is don't expect predictability.
Right.
You know,
but I think to the point it's now become so much so that now what would be predictable would be unexpected.
You're not wrong, but I'm still leaning on, you know, somebody you don't really think should. For all I know, Gantry could sit on the throne. Another Baratheon could be sitting on the throne at the end of this.
And something to bear in mind is we don't know what's going to happen, but we know there's going to be something bad to it. Like, people are going to die. People you don't want to see die. Some of the people we have seen from the very beginning are going to go down. Mm-hmm. You know, it's going to happen. I don't see a scenario in which both Dany and Jon come out of this alive. I mean, not this next episode, but the end.
I was about to say, are we talking about against the Night King, or are we talking about
against
before the final season or final episode of
before
the season?
The end of the series? Yeah, I cannot see a scenario in which they both live.
I agree. I think not only do I think one of them will die, I think it'll be by the hands of the other one.
Possibly, yeah.
You know, and
I just don't.
It'll be over the throne. So in other words, Dany loses it and kills him because she wants the throne, or he kills her because she's gone mad and he's protecting the people. Right.
Or, and this is a really popular fan theory, she is pregnant and she dies in childbirth. Because there's this prophecy from the books that, and I can never remember the exact. I always think of the guy from Arrow, the villain. It starts with an A, but where there's supposed to be this person who will be able to defeat the Night King, and he's going to do it with a sword bathed in the blood of his love. A lot of people think that means that he's going to kill Dany, but one could argue that if she died having his child, then he did kill her to some degree. Like, there could be an interpretation.
Well, wait, wasn't the sword bathed in the blood of his love? The sword that belonged to Aegon Targaryen, that was sitting right there at the foot of the bed when what's her face died, giving birth to Jon.
But that would then mean that Jon's father was the one. That killed him.
Right, but we're not talking about Rhaegar. We're talking about the sword being bathed in his love. That sword was bathed in the blood of many enemies, but it also had the blood of what's her face.
Yeah, bathed in the blood of the love of the person who would kill the Night King, though, is what it was supposed to be. Supposedly, but prophecy could mean anything. That's the tricky thing about prophecy. It can be really misinterpreted.
Thank you, Yoda. Okay.
Welcome, you are.
All right. Well, we're gonna jump into the final part here. We're gonna make this a little short because we're already over 2 hours in, 2.5 hours.
Oh wow, go us.
Yeah. Well, talk about fantasies. You'll just let it go.
I will. Well, I know a lot about all of the things we've spoken about. So.
What's really funny is because of not having the full panel, I was really and not any real stories to talk about this week. I was really stretching. I was looking for wrestlers to tell road stories, or, you know, my old band to talk about, like, the year we spent working on Born to Fall. Like, I was reaching for this episode, and you come on, it's like, well, we could talk about fantasy.
I was like, well, this has happened, and then there's Star Trek Discovery.
I said, all right, let's do it. You know? All right, let's do it. You came up with this show. This is all you.
This is mine, yeah.
But
well, I've been, like, engrossed in Game of Thrones spoilers because I may or may not have been avoiding doing some editing. But that's neither here nor there.
But it definitely brings up a point, like with the Game of Thrones ending, and I know they're talking about doing a prequel series to Game of Thrones. So obviously I'm thinking about like The Rise of the Mad King, for HBO to continue Game of Thrones even though they've ended this story arc.
They have said it would not have anything to do with Robert Baratheon's uprising.
Right, but it may be the rise of the Mad King
Right.
himself.
Right.
Him coming to power, as it were.
Yeah.
But the thought process I have is there are so many fantasy novel type books, or short stories or whatever that are out there that I think are phenomenal, but have always been overlooked for something to be put into live action. One of the examples I gave you was the Dragonlance, the Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss book, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, was made into a feature-length cartoon movie, which was subpar. And I don't think it really gave the book justice. And forget the fact that is a trilogy book, too, which launched a whole entire series of books.
Wow.
But you think about that, or you think about like a character like Dritz Duarden in the Forgotten Realms worlds,
or the Anne McCaffrey Dragon Riders of Pern, even all of those,
even Stephen King, The Eye of the Dragon, and we're passing out all these dragon ones. If we want another TV series, what about Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time?
Oh yeah. I mean, if talking about movies, there's an author, Juliet Marlier, who wrote an amazing series. It was the Seven Waters series, and it starts with a book called Daughter of the Forest, and it is brilliant. I mean, these are fantastic books, and they kind of each take place with like a generation later, and they're just brilliant, and I would love to see those made into films.
Well, that's really a point. It's like what book series is, especially in fantasy genre, because with the overwhelming success of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, again,
it gave new life to the fantasy genre in movies and TV.
It really did, and then with the phenomenal success of Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah,
it seems the perfect time to jump back into the fantasy realm. But what would be the right next series? And how would it be? Would it be TV? Would it be movie, feature-length movies? Should it happen? Is it the right time for it? And who do you pick to be one of those franchises?
I mean, I'm going to be a little self-servicey.
Well, of course. Obviously, besides the Song of Souls trilogy movies.
And those would be best as movies. So, Peter Jackson, if by some chance you are hearing this, I am interested and willing to talk.
Only Peter Jackson? What if George Lucas says, yeah, I'm looking to do a new trilogy, but not Star Wars. Would you mind if I
don't know.
I'm sorry,
I have to think. He's one I never considered. I'd have to think about that.
Sorry, that's probably the worst George Lucas impression I've ever done, but still.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have like the weird lack of chin neck thing either that has happened throughout the years.
Oh yeah, that poor man. He's got that sack hanging below his chin.
And I feel bad. Maybe there's something he's like some sort of disorder or something that he's got, because I know there are things that could do that. But I just kind of watch him in interviews now, and I'm like, what is that?
That's, you know what? I've caught myself staring at it, like I'm picking on him, like he's Dex from episode 2 in the diner. But I've looked at that, and I've often wondered, like, would it look less bothersome if he shaved the beard? Because the beard almost pronounces it there that much more.
It almost does. So then I'm always like, now is that just part of the aging process, or is there some sort of thing that he has that's caused that? And am I just being a jerk for looking at it?
No, we're more than likely being a jerk because we're sitting here talking about it. I can if he ever listens to Rumble the Myth podcast, I can gonna race ever having an interview with him. But they're gonna make fun of my chin.
Yeah. And I'm like, George Lucas never listened to this.
Yeah, he never.
Just not this episode.
No, not this episode. Go listen to War of the Stars or Journal of the Jedi. We praise you a lot on those.
Yeah. Series. Definitely the Juliet Marler series is one that I would just. Oh, that it's absolutely top on my list. Is Juliet Marler, anything she writes ever, but especially those. Especially Daughter of the Forest and Son of Shadows and Child of the Prophecy. Those would be brilliant because they are brilliant books. And I actually had the really astounding pleasure and honor of getting to speak with her just a little bit over Messenger. And it was like, oh.
Well, I said it before and I'll say it again. I would love to see the Dragon Chronicle trilogy made into live action movie and done right. For top choice as far as movies, definitely the Dragons of Autumn Twilight, Winter Night, and Spring Dawning by Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss. I would love to see brought to film. But I said it earlier, and if we're replacing Game of Thrones on TV, I can't think of better than The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. Starting at the eye of the world and just work your way through. Right.
I would also, this has been made into a TV series, but it was cut short way too soon. I would love to see them bring back Legend of the Seeker. It was fantastic. And in fairness, I haven't read the books, but I loved the TV series, and I would just... It was canceled way too soon. It should have kept going.
All right, that's a good one. I'm trying to think of any other ones that really stand out in my mind.
There's one called Fortune's Wheel by Cynthia Vogt, and it's actually a young adult book, but I would love to see that made into a film as well.
Well, I mean, again, being a Dungeons and Dragons fan, I'd love to see a Dungeons and Dragons film that they didn't screw up by casting a Wayans brother. You know, give me a real Dungeons. I forget
about that movie until someone mentions it all the time.
Give me a real Dungeons and Dragons movie based in the same type of realism that Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones had.
Oh, I know. It also had like off-brand Wesley Crusher as the lead.
Yeah. And Jeremy Irons hamming it up to no end.
Oh my God.
That movie never had a chance to get off the ground, and then its sequel was even worse.
Oh, I didn't know there was a sequel.
Oh yeah,
there's
it's called Wrath of the Dragon God.
Oh no.
Yeah, you might want to check that out. Didn't
it also have Riff Raff from Rocky Horror Picture Show in it? The first one?
I think it did, yeah.
Oh my God. I think that was like the one moment where I was like, okay, this is awesome, but the rest not.
You know, definitely check that out if you just want to like cringe for a couple hours. If you want to see something that actually makes me appreciate Napoleon Dynamite, see the sequel to the original Dungeons and Dragons movie, Wrath of the Dragon God.
Oh, even the name is bad. Even the name is stupid.
So yeah, definitely give me a proper Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah. Well, and now that it's gotten so big, that world, there's so much they could explore, and I think that's maybe why it's so easy to do it wrong. Because there's so much, and they just keep picking the wrong things.
You're not wrong. You're definitely not wrong. But guys, we're going to go ahead and we're going to call this one because we're already 2 hours and 32 minutes in. We may have to continue this story, to be continued, because there's plenty more fantasy coming. Obviously, we're going to be taking a look into the last 4 episodes of Game of Thrones.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I wouldn't mind dedicating an episode to Game of Thrones. Maybe when we're sitting poised for the final episode, we could just we can give a retrospect of the whole entire series.
Yes, I am on board.
All right, so that's something to think about in the next what, 3 weeks? Yeah. I guess it would be the next 3 weeks we would do that episode.
That's so close.
I know it is.
Like, I mean, the show will be fun, but the end, I don't want it to end.
That's kind of how I'm feeling about Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. It's like, oh, it looks so epic and wonderful, and I got to see it, but it's the end of the Skywalker saga. I don't want that to end. That's been my whole entire life. I don't want it to end.
Ugh, yeah. It'll be rough. I mean, you're talking to the person who still cries through most of Return of the King because it's the end.
Which end? There's like 17 of them.
All of them. Every one of them. I just cry and cry and cry.
I agree with Kevin Smith's take on Lord of the Rings. It should have ended at that scene where Frodo's in bed and Sam comes in, gives him that gay look, and all the hobbits are jumping around. You know?
Except that the Lord of the Rings fans would have been like,
And Sam should have just gone down on Frodo, and, you know, Frodo straight up bricks in Sam's mouth. Credits.
Now I'm always going to look at that scene differently.
I probably bastardized that joke, but it's a hilarious joke. But
you gotta take it where you can, you know.
Well, we've already discussed it before, but let's go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you and where they can find your books, so that way we get you some more sales, whatever we can do.
I like those. They can find me, well, first of all, you can find the books on Amazon. However, I do have a little announcement. It is coming up. I don't have an exact date yet, but there will be hardback editions available on Barnes & Noble.
BarnesandNoble.com?
Yeah, you can actually find the paperback on BarnesandNoble.com, but thus far there are no hardbacks. Soon there will be some, and there will be maps and all kinds of things for that.
Nice.
So, yeah, sort of special edition stuff coming out. They can also find me on Twitter, Christen Stovall. Just look up my name. I'm there. You can find me on Instagram. You find me on Instagram more than Twitter. You can also find me on Facebook with the Song of Souls Trilogy fan page and on my personal page, but I will warn you, I get a lot of spammy friend requests, so I'm a little wary of those these days.
As you should be.
Yes. And then you can also find me on Star Wars The Old Republic in playing as Inari Sun, and I am completely blanking on which server I'm on right now, so there's that.
Wasn't it the Ethan Hawke server or something?
It was Ethan Hawke, now it's Starforge.
Okay, Starforge.
So you can find me on Imp side as Inari Sun, most often as Inari Sun, and on Pub side I have a ridiculous amount of characters. I'm often actually male characters on Pub side, so I don't know what that's about.
You know, it's funny, I'm sitting here thinking about it. Like I said, if I ever turned on my my Old Republic game, it would literally take about a month of downloads of updates, because it's been that long since I've been on. But I think I'm actually on the Forge,
Starforge.
the Starforge.
Because
server.
it was Ebon Hawk, which was an East Coast server, and now it's Starforge. There should be a Realm of the Mist plays Star Wars: The Old Republic night, and a lot of them will be trying to figure it out, and I'm just going to come running in my level capped Imperial agent and be like, "Hello, boys."
Well, I'm a Jedi. I'm a Padawan Jedi. I think I'm lucky if I'm level 15.
Yeah.
Like I literally
on Pub side.
I literally just got off the training world and wound up on the first like major city world, and that's where I am.
They made it a lot so that if you want to just get through and not, they made it so it's a lot less grindy to level. I mean, people will probably argue with me on that one, but I think it's less grindy. I can level a character, like, if I'm just focusing on playing in a few days. But we got sidetracked.
now when I go to bed tonight, I'm going to have to start it up just so it can do its updates, because maybe Press A Gaming can pop out a night of Old Republic.
SWTOR. Yeah, if they do, I am on board. I'm not going to pick a baby character, though. I will be the master who leads you all through.
That's right.
I'll stand by and let you guys do the killing, because otherwise I look at them and they die. But
hey, watch the series of Fallout 76 on the YouTube channel right now, where I've traveled with people that are like heavily high level, and they're my tanks, and that's how I got through most of that game. Was like, we'd get together and we find like these high-powered beasts or whatever to have to kill, and I'd get a bullet or two in and just get the hell out of the way and let them handle it.
just so you get the kill cred.
Just so I get the experience, yeah.
Yeah. I've taken so many people through SWTOR. I have like several capped characters and command rank capped characters, although apparently they're going to be raising the level cap here pretty soon. I think possibly with the expansion in September.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Old Republic's kind of one of the oldest running MMOs next to like World of Warcraft, isn't it? Like so many others have kind of
be one of the older, yeah. And everybody's like, oh, you know, you go to a forum for any MMO and they're like, oh, it's gonna die, it's dying, it's dying, and then like 5 years later, it's still going. No, it's dying, it's dying, it's dying. But is it?
There you go. That's a question for all you guys down in the comment sections below. And, of course, guys, you can find me here at Realm of the Mist or wherever Realm of the Mist can be found. Of course, on our webpage, which is found in the description down below. Make sure you click that, go to the merch page, pick up Christen Stovall's books, check out our coming soon merchandise of T-shirts and everything else coming, including the already produced War of the Stars T-shirts. You can pretty soon click on that and get directed to making your shirt, because they are made to order. So guys, make sure you take care of that, and while you're there, again, pick up Christen Stovall's books. Pick up both of them, because the third one is coming August 15th.
Trust me, I really appreciate it, and I'll love you forever.
And, of course, you can find me on all the social networks. Just look for Christopher Stolle or Realm of the Mist Entertainment, guys. And I'll be back tomorrow night for It Had to Be Said with Venus, although Venus will be out sick this week. So it'll be me and whoever wants to join me. And I've got to figure out some topic of conversation that would fit It Had to Be Said in the direction Venus has directed it. So I want to keep with her flow. I don't want to go back to my flow. You know, so... And then, of course, I'll be on Wednesday night with my co-host and leader and, the Emperor to my Darth Vader, Mr. John Martulli with War of the Stars on Wednesday.
I've never done a show with him.
You should do a show with him. We've been doing a series on the women of Star Wars. We've been looking at the characters.
Oh, cool.
The characters of Star Wars, and I believe this episode is going to be all the secondary characters that really didn't get much of the limelight, like Mon Mothma or Dorma, one of the handmaidens of Padme, and those types of characters. We've looked into Leia, Padme, Jyn Erso, Ahsoka, and Asajj Ventress, and those characters. We're saving Rey for last. That will be the end of the series.
Right.
So now we're kind of looking into the more obscure characters.
Mm-hmm. Or like Padme's sister.
Right. Characters like that. So this would be the perfect time for you to jump in.
So I don't know those ones all that well, but that's definitely interesting. Yeah, maybe even start being like, what about like Satele?
There you go. Bara Sophie or Shakti and Illuminati. We could jump into all them characters.
Yeah. Well, if you ever do a show that talks about the Seans, like especially Theron Sean, he's my boo. I am all about that.
Well, I'm kind of arguing with him that I want to delve, once we finish with the females, that I want to delve into a more in-depth look at the male characters.
Yeah.
You know, especially the ones that, even though they may be mainstay characters, you never really delved into their history.
Right.
Or what they meant to the story in general.
Yeah.
So that I think that would be fun too. So
well, that might be a thing that once the third book's out and I'm not like balancing everything at once, that might be a show to pop onto.
There you go. So guys, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed us ranting about some fantasy worlds. Again, make sure you're checking out the Song of Souls Trilogy, and of course, as always, guys, we'll catch you next week. Have a good night, guys.